Everyone, I'd like to call to order the regular Board of Trustees meeting for January 14th, 2025. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will you call roll, please?
Mayor Karsbeck.
Here.
Trustee Hardy.
Yes.
Trustee Wing.
Here.
Trustee Ayers.
Here.
Trustee Kurtz.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy and Trustee Albrecht will be absent this evening.
Thank you, Clerk. All right. Next on our agenda is citizen participation. This is a chance for folks to speak to anything that is not on tonight's agenda. And let's start off with Kayla Coleman. And Ms. Coleman, if you, when you come to this front, mind saying your name and address as well. Thank you very much.
Kayla Coleman, 1518 Hollyberry Street.
Sorry, this is new to us. Clerk, do you want them here or do you want them in the corner?
At the podium.
Okay, if you could go, sorry, move over here. I'm sorry.
Oh.
New to me too.
Oh, I didn't notice. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Well, this is new to me too, and I didn't want to have to come up like first thing. So a few of the residents of Berthoud as well, we've all been kind of coming together to discuss the future of Berthoud. We all love it here. We're all really, I guess, focused on the town, the image, the functionality of it. And it seems like a number of us, I put down their legacy, but that's really not what I didn't mean that. So many of us are concerned about the number of houses being put in, the rate at which they're being put in, the proposition of 2- and 3-story apartment buildings with limited access, clogging roads, how it's going to affect how we all live here, right? We all have discussed as well, like affordable housing, whether or not that is an issue. Is there affordable housing in Berthoud? It's been brought up. We're building this so that more people can come here to work and work the jobs, to have the restaurants and the retail that the consumers and the people here are wanting. And we're just kind of wondering whether or not those homes are being thought through. Like Berthoud is kind of becoming a sea of houses with nothing to do here, you know? So how many people working at TPC, for example, where you can make much more than minimum wage with tips and whatnot, how many of them live here? You know, people are willing to commute when jobs have higher pay. So the argument for affordable housing with low-paying jobs, it's like even $2,300 a month, I think, was the proposal for the new apartments going in. It's really expensive. You're not going to be paying that working at McDonald's. You're just not. So kind of how is the town looking towards the future? Is there a planning and town development being considered? What are we doing to keep people shopping here, eating here, spending money here, apart from house, you know, taxes on our homes and things like that? That was my kind of concern tonight.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Next, Kelly McCauley.
Hi, Kelly McCauley, 227 North 2nd Street, Trailer 4. Just want to say thank you for 2nd Street. It looks fabulous back there. But then the town came and painted lines and X's on the street. Are you guys tearing it up to do some work on it? Maintenance, some town people came. Like, I don't know if they're marking sewer lines or gas lines. Anyone have any idea? Because you just spent a fortune and made the area beautiful, and now I'm afraid, or people back in the 2nd Street are afraid you might be tearing it up again. So I'm just curious about that. And then the other thing is, with the fires in California and the fires that were in Superior and Louisville, and with the dense population we are getting and the building, does Berthoud have a contingency plan for fire, or if the water goes out? Just curious, because that seems to be what's going to be happening from now on, and just a concern. I don't know if it's on the agenda for the town to maybe get a committee to look into something like that. Like, is there a command center if we get a fire? And just remember, we have one road in and out of town. And at the rate we're building, it's gonna be, you know, a lot of people could die. As we saw with the Paradise Fire, Superior only had 30,000, well, 25,000 people. They had a lot of main arteries, Superior, Louisville, during that fire. It still took my sister an hour to go a mile. And I'm worried about that in Berthoud for the whole community. So that's it, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'll turn it over to Administrator Kirk for that Second Street question. You know?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what the paint is for. But I would certainly expect, we are not tearing the street up. As she mentioned, we just spent a lot of money completely rebuilding Second Street. We wouldn't go back and tear it up. It doesn't mean that other private utilities that have access to the right-of-way may have some project plan that we're not aware of. That would also be unusual because we typically, before we go and do a major road rehabilitation like that, we coordinate with utilities to make sure that that's not gonna happen as soon as we're done repaving. So I don't know, I'll have to follow up with our public works team to see if they know of something I don't.
And briefly, do you mind just touching on the topic of intergovernmental agreements with fire and whatnot?
Sure, so Larimer County has an Office of Emergency Management. We work very closely with them. They work closely with the Berthoud Fire Protection District, which, as you know, is a separate legal entity from us, but provides fire protection services for our community. And we all work together on both emergency planning and response and recovery. And so we conduct trainings together. We have plans that have been put in place. We have our own continuity of operations plan, their emergency operations plan, plans at both the county and the local fire protection district level. So certainly, I think what's being described are things that are already occurring. Yeah.
Okay, Lee Jacobs. And I apologize if I'm getting these wrong here.
You've got it just right, thank you. So Lee Jacobs, 1305 Gateway Park Drive. Thank you for the opportunity for us to be here tonight to express our concerns as citizens of the community. I am very concerned and opposed to the apartment complex that has been submitted to the building department. I have read through the comprehensive plan, and it seems to really stress in there the value that the town has put on the unique character and the small town charm that people come here to appreciate. And so my question to the board, since you will be ultimately deciding whether or not this is approved, do you think that this fits in with the comprehensive plan and the guiding principle and the vision that, you know, this town has for that mountain corridor, the face of the, as it's worded in the plan, the face of the community? Do you think that this is a good fit where it is proposed to be located? Across the street from the arboretum that's going in, and I would like it, you know, to have that question answered, but also huge concern about the traffic that will go in and out of the community. It's already a problem, and I have looked through the proposed, or the traffic study that was submitted by the developer, and I don't see how that will work. I'm not an expert on traffic studies, but it doesn't make any sense to me. Oh, okay, that's fine. I just was looking for some input on how you felt about the,
Yeah, we can't, so, I'm sorry, this isn't your fault, I should explain this.
no, I've never been here before. I
No, it's okay, it's
apologize
my
too.
fault. We can't do a Q&A here, especially
Okay.
that being a public hearing coming up.
Okay.
There's some legal consequences to that, and on top of that, none of the board has actually seen it.
Yeah, for clarity, the apartment project is not on the agenda tonight, and it won't be on your agenda for some time. And officially, there is no apartment project as of yet. What's been submitted, actually, I'm not even 100% sure what's been submitted, but there is a change of zone that would be necessary before that even was submitted as a plan. So we've seen some preliminary concepts that I think the community has seen, because there was a neighborhood meeting independent of the town. We don't participate in those, nor do we organize them. That was driven by a potential developer. They have the right to organize meetings if they so choose, which I think they did. But again, there's a long list of public process steps that need to occur before a project like that even comes to you for consideration, and they're at the very front end of that.
Okay, thank you. And I just really wanted to express that there are a large number of people in the community that are very, very opposed to it. So just to be aware of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time for now. John Terrell?
Hello. John Terrell, 1621 Mountain Avenue. I've been to a lot of these. They're not very much fun. My main concern is the traffic. I feel like I've talked about it so much, and it feels like it falls on deaf ears. There's a lot of building going on. Somebody's obviously concerned. They put a camera up at the north end of my property, looking at the traffic. I really hope you guys are strongly considering the traffic at that Meadowlark area. You're considering putting a right-hand turn off of Mountain Avenue onto Meadowlark. There's not very much entrance area from my entrance to that stop sign, to that right turn. And now, I keep hearing about more developments that are coming to town. I'm not against the growth, but I really feel like we're really dropping the ball in the traffic. And I understand that there's studies that have gone on and so on and so forth, but I don't know that they're really taking consideration all these other building proposals that are on the horizon. I really hope that this is more of a just get it out there, because like I said, I really don't know who to talk to about it. You're supposed to meet up, developers never heard, reach out to them, a little bit of, I got the pacifier a little bit, but nobody seems to be hearing me or taking me seriously. My business is being squeezed out, and I really hope that you guys are doing some consideration at that intersection, because there's a lot that's going to be happening there, not just in the immediate, but down the road, and I hope all that's being considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Terrell. Jessica Higgins?
Hi, my name is Jessica Higgins. My address is 1303 Gateway Park Drive. I'm here to educate myself on the process of approval for development, mostly because I'm very concerned about the Gateway apartment proposal that has happened. I know that we're not talking about it today, but I just wanted to make sure that I started to have my voice heard, and so that I could educate myself and understand each step of the process so that I can speak up when it's important and when it's appropriate. So my first concerns are just quickly safety, density, and the very, very poor reviews of the specific management company that is proposing this. It will be the face of Berthoud. It will be the first thing we see, and 4 years down the road, when the development company doesn't care and they're long gone into their next town, it is going to look terrible. It really is going to have a long-term effect, and I'm anxious to see how the community can be part of the process and really have their voices heard. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. John Bethel?
Thank you, John Bethel, 1513 Glacier Avenue. I am also in the Gateway Park residential area. I'm also here speaking on the Gateway apartment proposal by the developer. For those that don't know, it's proposed on the northwest corner of the Parkway in Mountain Avenue. It's a 6-acre plot that they're proposing 6 buildings of 3 stories right on Mountain Avenue. It's just the traffic in that neighborhood. The developers and the traffic controls probably don't drive the drive. I go to and from down Berthoud Parkway 287 Mountain constantly. To see the line of traffic that's now building just come off of 287 down Berthoud Parkway to come into our subdivision from Berthoud, from 287 to almost, I think it's 10 East, 10E. If that's the road, the traffic stopped there. And that's just coming home. That's coming out of Berthoud. I don't know if they're cutting through down the mountain. With west side crossings on the west side of the neighborhood and the proposed Gateway Park buildings there, I don't know how many cars, with 2 cars per household, I guess, or apartment complex I would expect. Just the egress of getting in and out of the of the neighborhood, is just, it's a huge concern. And I also, like the other residents that have talked about it, what Berthoud is supposed to be looking like, we've been here, I guess, going on 10 years, and, we tried to shut the door when we got here. And we, again, not against growth, but I think growth can be done correctly. I think we want to maintain what Berthoud is about and what the original vision was of it. And that is a small town, but keep, maybe the facade of it, maybe build apartments off of Mountain. I don't think Mountain's the place for them. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening, but I hope that the branding presentation that's coming up later, that we don't turn this into from the garden spot to the apartment spot. So anyway, I leave that with you, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dave Bellinson?
Dave Melanson, 1312 Gateway Park Drive, Berthoud. And you're probably not surprised to hear why I'm here. I think the affordability question is important, but three-story buildings are not the only answer to that, and this was brought up in very precise terms with the development group when they had the public meeting, and clearly that has not been listened to. The plans filed are not that way. So I do fear a development that says, nope, this is what we build, this is what we do, and to heck with you. And if you don't like it, well, we're sorry, but that's what we build. And we have some very nice townhouses in there now, and that could be, a good way to help meet that, as someone else has already pointed out. These apartments, without some sort of significant change, are not going to meet the needs of folks who are working low-level jobs. They're just not. I mean, do the math. It's not a hard thing to see. I would recommend not doing a zoning change, because I think that's probably the best way to keep a wall there. And also, there's some nice development coming in around that area. We've got, I believe, a dentist coming in. We've had Berthoud Drug come in. This is all great development. I don't think I've heard anybody complaining about any of it. So it's not a matter of zero growth. But if we're not careful, we're going to have a growth bomb hit the town. And then it's going to be a little bit of a joke when people drive in and see Berthoud, garden spot of Colorado. No, Berthoud, the bedroom communities, paved over by developers of Colorado. It's not where we want to go. It's not where we should go. It's not where people who live here wanted to go. And so I would ask and recommend that that be your decision as well, that we don't allow Berthoud to go down and become, just another city on the Front Range. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who spoke up. Sorry, I didn't give the kind of instructions in the beginning. It is unconventional to speak and not have replies here. So we do appreciate you coming out tonight and giving up your evenings. And once that does, or if it comes before us, I'm sure you guys will be here, but we'll be thinking about it too. So again, thanks for being so respectful and coming out tonight. That will conclude our public comment, so we can move on now to consent. Trustee Wing, did you want to?
Yeah, I don't need to go into any detail. I just wanted to call out, Chris, to you and your team. Again, I'm always impressed by the reports, and they're just very well done. There's a lot of work being done, and I can't wait to see those folks in person and have them come in front of us once in a while, because they're accomplishing what I consider some really, really good things. And then my second point is the year-to-date through November budget. Kudos again to you for your leadership and the town, your staff. For the budget year-to-date through November, you're $6 million over in revenue to budget, and I think you're $23 million under in expenses. So for a past CEO of an organization, those kind of numbers are something to be very proud of. So I just want to recognize you and your team and the staff and the town for really a banner year financially to budget. Thank you.
Yes, with that said, would you like to move on consent?
Yes, I would.
All right, move to complete consent.
I'll second.
All right. Trustee Wing has moved, Trustee Kurtz has seconded. Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Trustee Wing,
Yes.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes, all right, consent has been approved. We can move on now to the regular item. We'll start out with the Legacy Park preliminary plat. This is a public hearing. And I'll let Con or Director Johnson go into that in more detail here. Senior planner Con a little bit.
Good evening, Mayor, Town Board of Trustees, Ton Hillenbrand, and I will correct the mayor, it's actually planning manager now,
Oh.
so.
Yeah, I'd say.
So before I jump into tonight's agenda, we are going to go over 3 different slides that have to do more with the application process of what we are currently going to be addressing this evening. So this is the procedural procedures we'll see on the screen before you for a preliminary plat application. So this gives you an overview of the process that is included, or as is the steps that are included in the preliminary plat. So the first step would be pre-application. And what this is a pre-application meeting with the town staff. That is everyone from our planning department to our water utilities, public works, as well as the fire district can attend these pre-application meetings. And what they are is an opportunity for the applicant to meet with staff to get some preliminary feedback on their proposal. Really, it's to give them, this bird's eye view of what to expect as they move through the process and some of the hurdles that they may see along the way. And it gives them enough information then to decide if they want to pursue with making an actual application. Pre-application meetings are required to move forward with a land use application. And generally, once an applicant completes the pre-app, we see an application within 2 to 6 months of that pre-application meeting. And typically pre-apps are good for 6 months. So if we don't see an application, then we ask them to do a new pre-app. The second step then is the application submittal and development review. So that is when they make an actual application and they submit the required documents to town staff, and then we process it. It goes out for referral agency review. There are a number of resubmittals, and then once that's complete, and on most applications that's around 6 months, if not a little bit longer. And then once they complete all referral agency comments, everything is addressed to staff liking and other agencies, then it moves up into then step 3, which is the public meeting or hearing process, which is where we are this evening. So that typically that is scheduled within 1 month's time. So we have planning commission in most cases that then move on to town board of trustees, and there's usually a month gap in there. Then following approval, if the applicant is approved, it moves into step 4, which is the post-approval actions. And that takes about a 1-month time frame as well. And that is anything from getting final documents signed and then recorded with the county, any additional follow-up. So this next slide shows the breakdown then of land division process, which is where we are currently. We are in a preliminary plat. So you'll see that the first step of a land division process is change of zone and neighborhood master plan. So with this application in particular, they have already gone through and gotten approval for a change of zone and neighborhood master plan, and that is step 1. So as you see, we are in step 2, so this is the preliminary plat. The step 1 takes generally 4 to 6 months to complete, and step 2 takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months to complete. So again, the applicant application we'll be discussing this evening is in preliminary plat phase. And then following preliminary plat, they will go into step 3, which is the final plat phase. And again, that can take anywhere from 8 to 12 months to complete. And between this phase, preliminary plat and final plat, the applicant is required to complete yet again another pre-application meeting, submit an application, new application fees, and then all the updated documents. So after final plat, or with final plat, there's also a development agreement, and that's an agreement that the applicant or developer enters into with the town of Berthoud, and it addresses responsibilities for infrastructure, water dedication, lots of the serious details. Step 4 then, which is a 6 to 8 month process, after approval of a final plat, is then pre-construction meetings, inspections, development agreement adherence, and then inspections. And again, this is when then the civil requirements, civil work, utilities, infrastructure are all put in place for a land division of this scale. And then step 5, which is is a wrap up or there about a month's time frame, they can then move into building permits. And then for commercial properties, they would then move into use by special review approval or site plan review. And then following that, they then move into building permits. So that is a bird's eye view of the land division process. And before I move on to the next slides, any questions on that? Okay. So this last slide, before I get into the item at hand, this gives our audience more or less a overview of the public hearing process. So the first step, of course, is I will give a presentation on the application, and this is the details of the official request. It includes location and how the project satisfies the development code and the comprehensive plan. The second is then the applicant will, after my presentation, will come up and give their own presentation, and they will address more of the items specific to the proposal and make their case for approval. And then following their presentation, it will be the public comment period. So that is when the mayor will open the floor for public participation, and citizens will have an opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes about the proposed project. And this time is used to ask questions, provide concerns, and offer approval or disapproval of the proposal. And then once public comment is closed by the mayor, we then move into discussion and vote, and that is when the town board of trustees does just that. They discuss the item at hand and then get any follow-up information they need from staff, and then we move into a vote of approval or what have you on the item. So now, with all that, I will move into the item this evening. So this is Legacy Park, the Legacy Park project. The currently undeveloped property is an approximate 306 acres and is located south of Mountain Avenue, east of Meadowlark Drive, and west of South Berthoud Parkway. The subject property is currently zoned UR residential and SR suburban residential. The future land use map identifies this area as suburban business along Mountain Avenue, transitioning into urban residential primarily along the west portions of the site along Meadowlark Drive, and suburban residential along the south and east portions of the site. The open space place type has been identified along Dry Creek, and the northern portion of the property is located within the Mountain Avenue overlay corridor. The applicant is requesting preliminary plat approval for the creation of 439 single-family residential lots, 17 future development tracts, and multiple outlots to accommodate future public parks and open space development, including a centrally located linear park. So you may be asking yourself, well, what is the difference between a lot, a tract, and an outlot? So before we move further into the specific project, I'd like to provide some clarification on those who are less familiar with this terminology. These terms are defined by state statute and are consistent or normal throughout Colorado. So rightfully, if you are here in Berthoud or Larimer County or somewhere like Grand Junction, these terms would be the same across the state. So simply defined, a lot is an area of land created through the subdivision process and can be legally sold and developed upon creation, which would be final plat. An outlot is an area of land created through the subdivision process as well that is not a building lot. An outlot is reserved for open space and other public purposes such as drainage easements. And then a tract is an area of land created through the subdivision process as well that can be legally sold but cannot be developed until further subdivided. So meaning in this case, the land must come back before the town in a preliminary and final plat or similar process to be further subdivided into lots. So, and why is this important? Often subdivisions of this scale are not typically created or platted through one single preliminary and final plat, but rather are created through multiple plats. In this case, the applicant is pursuing this first of likely many preliminary plats, which can be defined as phase 1 or filing 1 of the Legacy Park subdivision. Because tracts are not developable, the 17 proposed tracts will be required to be further subdivided through subsequent preliminary and final plats, eventually being broken down into lots and potential additional outlots if necessary. And over time, this will lead to the full build out of the project. And at this time, the only lots being created with this request would be the 439 single-family residential lots. It should be noted that each subsequent preliminary and final plat will require an application and the required reports and plans and a public hearing process. So now back to the project. Legacy Park, formerly known as Ludlow Farms, received neighborhood master plan and rezone approval in April of 2023. The approved neighborhood master plan includes a mix of uses, including single-family detached, townhomes, condos, commercial development, with an estimated project total of 1,500 to 1,800 units over the course of many years. And the applicant can give you probably more specifics on that. The proposed preliminary plat is in substantial compliance with the approved neighborhood master plan. The road network, lot configuration, density, and proposed open space areas are aligned with the previously approved plan. The 439 single-family residential lots created with this plat meet the standards of the SR Suburban Residential District, and the preliminary plat, if approved, would allow the applicant to apply for a final plat, which would formally subdivide the 439 single-family residential lots, 17 future development tracts, and the multiple outlots. And as a reminder, the remaining portions of the site, or the remaining tracts, would come back before the Planning Commission and Town Board of Trustees through subsequent preliminary and final plats. So Section 6 of the Town Development Code states that the town shall use the following review criteria as seen in your packet and on the screen, in addition to other applicable provisions of the code to evaluate the application. In order to approve a preliminary plat, the criteria must be met. So Planning Commission finds that the Legacy Park preliminary plat request meets the preliminary plat review criteria. Specific details on how the project are meeting these criteria are provided in your staff report. So Planning Commission heard the request for approval of the Legacy Park preliminary plat at their December 12, 2024 public hearing and voted unanimously to send their recommendation of approval to the Town Board of Trustees, subject to the following 2 conditions. So 1, the applicant shall address the remaining comment received by Little Thompson Water District regarding a small error that does not impact the scope nor design of the project at the final plat submittal. And 2, the applicant shall address the remaining comments received by Baseline Engineering Surveyor regarding minor technical errors at the final plat submittal. For reference, both the Little Thompson Water District and Baseline Engineering Surveyor comments were included as attachments to the staff report. The remaining comments are minor in nature and both agencies are comfortable with having them addressed at the final plat submittal. And with that, I am available for any questions.
Trustees, questions for Manager Hill? The applicant. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Carspec, trustees. My name is Don Henson, 700 Ken Pratt Boulevard, Longmont. Thank you for spending time to make Berthoud a better community. I'm one of the partners in LP Communities. It consists of 3 families that have worked together for quite some time now. Our other partners are in the back. My son, John Michael,
We have Ken and Jake Spencer's another partner, lives in Niwot, and then we have Kevin, there he is. He lives also in Longmont. We also have the property owner, Greg Ludlow, back there, as well as his nephew, Ryan Coles, here. The Ludlows have been very patient in going through this process and working to make sure that this development fits their vision for Berthoud. Now, before we get into the preliminary plat, and Tom did a good job of giving the history, but I think it's worth looking at a little bit of the history of property and where we've come so far. The property was annexed originally in 2010, some 15 years ago, so it was slated for development for quite some time. It was rezoned to PUD in 2011, and then an overall development plan, kind of a precursor to our neighborhood master plan, was approved also in 2011. In 2021, the town updated their comp plan. And after the comp plan was updated, we spent nearly a year and a half revamping and changing the land plan to make sure it complied with the comp plan. And that was a long process. It was not only making it comply with the comp plan, but finding out what the town of Berthoud wanted and trying to create a really nice community and something special for the town. That resulted in 2023 with a rezoning and neighborhood master plan approval. And then that is where we are today. In December, the Planning Commission approved our preliminary plat. If you'll notice, that spans probably about 4.5 years of submittals and reviews by staff, and more submittals and more reviews by staff. And that's because development, that's what it takes to get it right. And that's just the process we're in. But it does take a long time, and it takes a lot of consultants and a lot of staff time to get to the point we are now. But one of the values of that is with the neighborhood master plan, a lot of work and a lot of reviews gone into that. You've already established the streets, you've already established land use, you've established pretty much the footprint. Now we got to take the preliminary plat and take it to the next step. But before we get into the technical part, just a quick review. Some of you were here for the neighborhood master plan process, some of you were not. We didn't just come in and do a plain vanilla development. We spent a lot of time with the town, talking with people in the town, studying the town about what the community needs to be. And these are just some of the elements influencing the community we're creating. One was a synergy with Wagner Farm Park. We'll talk about that more in a minute. The entry corridor on Mountain Avenue. I know there's a desire for some nice commercial and restaurants, and we're committed to make that happen. Strong sense of community. That fits right in with our MO of creating, not building subdivisions, but creating communities and putting the elements in there to help communities bond. Then Berthoud's history and heritage. That's something that you're really proud of. You got a very active historical society, and we think that's going to be neat incorporating that into our plan. And last but not least is a mix of housing types to create a community. We want to create housing because it's really not housing, communities, people. So we need to create a place for people, from school teachers and first responders to executives to retirees. So we want to serve a wide cross-section of the community with housing, and that will help create that community and that strong sense of bond.
Now, the vision plan was in 2 years of creation before we had the neighborhood master plan. One of the things that we were very fortunate with our location is the vicinity of Wagner Farm Park. That is really a jewel for the town, and we would be remiss if we didn't take advantage of that and create some synergy between the two. I mean, what a facility and what a nice place for the residents. How do we create that synergy? This is a view of the proposed arboretum from the north looking south. That star down there is Mountain Avenue. You guys have helped us out quite a bit with the regional trail there. Makes a great connection for walking and biking. That was an obvious thing to create that synergy and that connection. We're going to continue that regional trail as Legacy Trail, and it will wind directly through the community. So there'll be a nice pedestrian and biking connection between Wagner Farm Park and the community, as well as beyond, because that trail will connect to other regional trails. Some of the other elements to create the community, we talked about a mix of housing types. We're committed to that. Like I said, from small single family, alley loaded, front loaded, townhomes, courtyard homes, and then some attached multifamily. So we're hitting a wide range of housing, and we'll go into that a little later in the presentation. And then Legacy Park. You'll notice it's a linear park. There was a reason for that. If you're going to create community, you want a place for people to gather and to associate with each other. And by that being a linear park in the way it is, it puts everybody in close proximity to a park. It's a good gathering place, and there's some amenities in the park you'll see in a minute that tie that all together, and it'll just create a great gathering place for the people who live there, as well as the people who use the trail and walk through there. Which I just talked about, the Legacy Trail. Being the extension of Legacy, of the regional trail system. Then we have the Mountain Avenue Retail. This makes it a truly mixed-use community. When you can live there, walk up and get a sandwich, or walk up and get a beverage in the evening or something like that, or some shopping close by. That all goes to create that community we're trying to create. This is far from a plain vanilla development. The heritage stop stations. To celebrate the history, we have about a dozen heritage stop stations planned, and you're going to see an example of those in a few minutes, where each stop station is a place that tells the story of Berthoud. And quite frankly, I've enjoyed learning about the history from Mark French and the Historical Society. There's a pretty interesting history here it's a good read. It's several good reads. Not only did we do the stop stations, but we went the extra mile. Instead of with the streets, we worked with Mark French and the Historical Society. Instead of using plain vanilla generic street names, we put a lot of time and effort in the research. The streets are named after historical figures who were important in the history of Berthoud. You know, we have a street, F.I. Davis Street, who was the first mayor. There's also a street named after Floyd Clymer, who at 14 years old was the youngest Ford dealer in the nation. I still kind of chuckle at that one. As well as the Ludlow family, and that took some effort with LEDA, which is the 911 agency that regulates street names. They have some pretty stringent criteria, but when we went through enough names, we found enough that we could make that work. And so each street is going to tell a story of the history of Berthoud, and I think that's important when we're trying to build that history and that connection. In addition to that, the amenity center, you'll see a photo or a rendering of it in a minute. The railroad the amenity center is themed after the railroad because Berthoud's birth and the railroad are inextricably bonded when they were on the Little Thompson River down the hill. So I can talk about all of those, but a picture's worth 1,000 words, so we'll take a quick stroll through just to show you what we're creating here. You have a family that had a ball at Wagner Farm Park. They head down, start at Legacy Trail, pick up some ice cream, walk along the promenade to one of the favorite viewing spots, and they're looking down Legacy Park over Skip Rock Pond. And just for scale, if you'll remember, that's a half a football field wide and 7 football fields long. So, and it's really the centerpiece of the whole community. It looks down, and at the other end, they'll be able to see the amenity center. So it's bookended by Skip Rock Pond and the amenity center. Can't have Skip Rock Pond without skipping a few rocks. And this is just an example. This is just south of the Skip Rock Pond. There's a band shell. This is an example of what the linear park, Legacy Park, will look like with the gathering areas and the band shell. This is an example of one of the history stop stations we talked about. That's Mr. Ludlow's brand up there on the wagon. That celebrates the pioneer days and the cattle ranching that were part of the history. And one of the elements we're working on is putting QR codes at each stop station that ties in with the Historical Society's website. So at each stop station, you scan the QR code and it tells the story of that particular element. Housing types, we talked about that before. Broad number of housing types from front-loaded single family, alley-loaded single family, courtyard homes, townhomes. The upper left photo, yeah, that is a photo. That's an actual photo of some of the Mission Homes product that David, Greg, and DJ have figured a way to make housing attainable for first responders and teachers and that sort of thing, and we're very proud to have them as part of our builder program. And then you get to the other end, which is our amenity center. You can see the railroad theming there. We're working on getting a dining car to make that really authentic. Let's hope we can pull that off. And then behind the amenity center is a pool and spray ground. And I did want to point out one thing. You see the star there, you see the amenity center. That is on a high knoll. It's one of the best viewpoints on the whole 300 acres. In fact, I would say one of the best viewpoints anywhere in town. And the first inclination is, gosh, we got to put our most expensive lots there because that has the best views and that gets the most revenue. We took another approach. We decided to locate the amenity center there where all the residents can have that view and enjoy that view. And I think that is just the right thing to do, and I think everybody's going to enjoy that. But then to make sure, if you see that star there, it's moved down the hill just a little bit to the west. That location right there is about between 30 and 40 feet above 287, and it looks towards the Rockies. And that will be tied in with the Legacy Trail, which is the public trail, so that everyone, whether you're resident, non-resident, anybody that walks on the trail will have access to Sunset Terrace and can enjoy those views right there. That is something I think the whole town and probably people from out of town will probably enjoy coming and watching sunsets and probably taking a few prom pictures or something there too, because that's going to be spectacular. So that is just a little idea of our vision. I just wanted to review that. I appreciate your patience and letting us run through that. Again, we talked about the history before. We've addressed a lot of the issues. You guys have reviewed them, the staff has reviewed them. We're now to the technical part of making sure that what we have on this plan matches the neighborhood master plan and matches everything that you approved prior to that. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to someone who's a lot more technical than me and let Kristen Turner come up and run through the technical part with you.
Welcome.
Hello. My name is Kristen Turner, 444 Mountain Avenue. Thank you for allowing me to have a few more minutes. I'll give you some of the details of the project and then happy to answer any questions that you might have. All right, so you've heard about the neighborhood master plan, and I just wanted to put them both on the screen for you. On the left, you see the approved neighborhood master plan. On the right, you see the preliminary plat. Sometimes it's easier when they're right next to each other to compare them side by side. So as we've discussed, the neighborhood master plan proposed a mix of residential product types, also commercial development located along Mountain Avenue and at 287. You'll see that we were proposing preservation of the wetlands area, enhancing that corridor and making sure that stays an open space portion of the property. And then that central park that runs through the middle of the park, it's connected from Mountain Avenue through the commercial all the way down to Spartan, and then it extends south of Spartan, and it ends up being that connector down to the open space to the south as well. So then when you look on the right-hand side at the preliminary plat, what you see in color is what is part of this preliminary plat that's proposed now. And everything that you see that's in gray is a future development tract, which means it'll have a plat or a site plan that comes back before you in the future once the details of those areas are worked out. And so as you'll notice, it looks almost the same. Some of those tract areas are bigger tracts right now, but in the future they may be broken down into smaller tracts to look like that neighborhood master plan. But in general, the street layout, the types of lots that are shown, the configuration is all looking like that neighborhood master plan. I lost my arrow key. Should I try the clicker pad?
Give it a shot.
All right. All right, so some of the details of the plan. The site is approximately 305 acres. We're proposing 439 single-family detached lots at this time. There are 17 future development tracts, and there are about 9.5 acres of that central park located north of Spartan. There's additional park space located south of Spartan. As you know, every subdivision that is built in Berthoud has some required subdivision identity elements. And these are just to do kind of what the title says, right? Provide some identity for that neighborhood. And each neighborhood determines how they want to do that. What is the look that they want? So there are 8 required subdivision identity elements for this neighborhood. We are proposing 10 for this neighborhood, and they will include pocket parks, trails, playgrounds, a pool, pollinator plant palette that will be used throughout the community, a future community building, and alley-loaded streets. All right, so if we take a look at the trail system, I want to talk a little bit about that pedestrian and bike network, because we believe this is kind of like a puzzle piece to the overall network for this neighborhood. It's just a large piece that's kind of centrally located. So there's essentially 3 levels to this system if you break it down. The first being the detached walk system. Those are your detached sidewalks that are adjacent to all of your right-of-way throughout the community. So it's located everywhere. The sidewalks are detached, you have nice big tree lawns, it provides that sense of safety, some shade, a nice place to walk. And this portion of the system is going to connect everybody within the neighborhood to all parts of the neighborhood. Kind of that next level of the system are the neighborhood trail networks. These are going to be the trail pieces that weave through the open spaces, through the park spaces, and they are the connectors. So they connect your parks to your open space to your residential streets, sidewalk network, and also to the regional trail network. These are gonna be a mix of concrete trails and soft surface trails, and they just kind of weave their way through those open spaces. And then that third level of the system is that regional trail network. As you can see from this map, there is a big connecting piece within the boundaries of the Ludlow property that are gonna connect trail systems that are already in place, and they're also gonna provide the opportunity for that system to expand further to the west. So what you see in orange is already part of Berthoud's trail system. And so that cyan color is the portion of the trail system that would be built with this development that provides that connection from north to south and east to west. So we provide a stub off to the west for future development there. We provide that connection to the north as well. And that's gonna weave right through the center of the property, through that Central Park area, and then back over to the eastern side of the property to connect with the existing system. Here's a little bit closer look at that Central Park area. The first two images that you see moving from left to right are zoomed in. We had to break it into pieces because it's so long. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the overall of that system. So we do have that trail system that runs through the middle of it. And then as you move from north to south, we have different amenities that are included, including loop walks, there are shaded pavilions, we have an amphitheater area, there's large turf areas, so folks have a place to hang out, throw a frisbee, run around with their kiddos. There'll be restrooms that are provided. And then at the very south end, just south of Spartan, is where you'll see that future amenity center area that will include that community building, the pool, and some of the courts and things like that. So looking at access points for the site, in general, good planning will tell you to connect in all opportunities that you can to the existing road network. So we do have 10 access points for this property. The reason we have these is to help distribute the traffic throughout the site. It will provide options to residents and will also reduce the burden on any given intersection by having those multitude of access points available. The lighter stars that you see are going to be associated with future development, and the darker stars that you see have an association with this first preliminary plat. All right, so that takes us back to the preliminary plat, which is the plan that you are evaluating tonight. A couple of other things that I did want to bring up to you. We did host an additional neighborhood meeting prior to the Planning Commission. We wanted to invite the neighbors in, give them an update on kind of where we were in the process. We probably had 20 to 40 people participate. It was a good turnout for that meeting. And I'd say it was 50-50. We probably had about half the group that had been involved in this process through the neighborhood master plan process, and the other half that was new to it, newer to town, and so this was more new information for them. Some of the things that we discussed that night, we sort of recapped the neighborhood master plan, how those decisions were made and how the property was gonna be moving forward. We had questions and discussed traffic and how that would look on the property. We also talked about the type of housing and why the types of housing that are included here are included. There was a lot of discussion about the comprehensive plan, the zoning that's called out in your future land use plan, and why those different types of housing products have been incorporated into this project. We did talk about density as well and how it conforms with the neighborhood master plan and the zoning that is approved for this property. And we also talked about the impact to schools. And this property, I think we have discussed this here before, but this property has been sent out for referrals to the school district. They have evaluated it. And in particular, they have specifically said that they are requesting cash in lieu rather than a school site. But that was a question that came up as part of that neighborhood meeting as well that we had some discussion on. So to wrap up this presentation, we do believe that this project is in conformance with your comp plan and your future land use map, the land use code, your master traffic plans and master trail plans, as well as the approved neighborhood master plan. So we are asking for an approval tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Trustee, question?
I have
Trustee Wing?
a few. I think it's a really good idea that you did the north part of you call it Central Park, even though it doesn't really fit with what you're platting. I think that's really good. What's the water source for the pond?
Don, do you have an answer to that? The water source for the pond?
Yeah, we plan to have a non-pot system here, and so the pond will be, the water source will, first it'll be a line pond, and then, at such time as due to evaporation, if we need to refill it, it'll be from the non-pot system.
Okay, so somehow you'll tie into that and
Yes.
refill it as need be. Great. So it's hard to see, certainly hard to see the names of the roads in there, but I think there's a Spartan Avenue and a Ludlow Ave, and you did your stars on there. Do you anticipate those actually tying in to an intersection to 287?
So Spartan will connect to 287.
Okay,
That is planned and there will be a light there. Welch will, nope, sorry, it's Ludlow. I'm looking, I had to write cheat sheet notes too because it's so tiny. Ludlow will connect not to 287, but to Meadowlark. And let me look back at my neighborhood master plan.
okay. That's good.
Those are the three primary roads that will connect to 287 or to Meadowlark.
Will there be, in the final build out or even in this phase, do you have pure custom homes, custom homes? Are they part of the development?
Not in this phase, no. They'll probably be in the southern phase, across the creek. When you're talking about pure custom from scratch plan, not in the northern part.
Okay. And then in this drawing that you have up right now, I don't, and maybe I'm just looking at it wrong, but isn't the amenities on this at the end of Central Park?
Yes.
So they're just not illustrated in this particular thing. And so all of the amenities you're offering, by the way, a lot of work went into this. I think you did a nice job. I think it's a beautiful looking neighborhood. And obviously it's taken a long time to get to this point. But the amenities, will they be free of charge to all residents?
They will be owned by the Metro District, and we will comply with the Metro Districts, with the laws governing Metro Districts as far as access to them. So, just like your park, there may be some type of small fee that you have to pay to help offset some of the operating costs that aren't offset by the tax revenue, but it will comply with the public access requirements of the Metro District laws.
Okay, that leads into a good question. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, get the cart before the horse, but how many Metro Districts do you anticipate being in this built-out community?
There are 5 approved, there are 5 that are existing today.
Okay, there are 5 existing today.
And will there be a main Metro District that doesn't have any residences, houses as part of it?
No, there's not, I hate using that term, but there's not a, I'm sorry, I apologize. Kevin Mulshan from Longmont, Colorado. They're currently, the property is approved for 5 districts. And the only district that won't have control by like a resident or anything is we anticipate one of the districts eventually will cover the retail area. Because when the town, and we work with Walt and the folks at the town and trying to attract retail developers, big boxes, et cetera.
Mhm.
They don't want to be in districts, just being blunt about it, they don't want to be in districts with residents, so they like to have their own district to control their own internal assets. But there's not one district controlling, the other district. That, in fact, I don't think you're allowed to do that under your new ordinance for districts. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Another question? Kurt? Yeah, I do have a couple. Let's see, I'm just organizing my thoughts here.
Trustee Kurtz, would it be all right if I add one
Yeah,
item of note while you're looking at your notes? One thing that may be a question for the trustees or for others in the room, the intersection of Meadowlark has a planned signal as part of a different development. So Meadowlark is currently has been expanded on the north side of the road, and a signal is planned as part of the West Side Crossing project, which is at the northwest corner of Meadowlark and Mountain Avenue. So that intersection will need a signal and some traffic expansion. And some of that may even change as a result of what ultimately gets built in the commercial areas. We do traffic studies as projects progress. So we have preliminary traffic studies that outline a certain number of traffic improvements, but those get updated as plans change over the course of 10 or 15 or 20 years. A project like this is a long-term build-out. These don't happen in 3 years, right? And so those traffic studies get updated and new improvements get made that are a result of the impacts of the development. But I just wanted to point out Meadowlark, it's not identified as a signal here, but that's because it's part of a different project. It's already under construction.
Cool. Thanks for that. That was a question. I have a similar question. So I'll start off. I think I have 3 questions related to the specific preliminary plat review criteria. So some of these questions, I'll ask them to you, but they may end up bouncing back to staff, so whoever's most appropriate, let me know. Review criteria 2 is the application is consistent with the approved concept plan and incorporates the town's recommendations and any conditions of approval. So the planning commission did approve this, I imagine sometime before the holidays, but there was a condition in there about a signal at Spartan Avenue and Highway 287, and this is saying that that was a condition of the neighborhood master plan, I apologize. But it says that this was addressed in the traffic impact study, and I'm just wondering, I did read through or tried to read through that impact study, and I didn't see it specifically addressed, so it's possible I just didn't look at the right page, but could you talk a little bit about what you mean by that signal is addressed and what is meant by that?
So a signal is planned for that
Yeah.
intersection. When it's triggered is part of the process of
Sure.
how this community comes online. But it is identified as required as part of this development, this overall development.
Will that signal be triggered as part of this 400 and something some odd units? It would be triggered in a later plat or a later.
Triggered in a later plat, and I'm looking to our traffic engineer who will jump up here and correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. No, that I was just looking for clarification there.
Sure.
So then on review criteria for, this might be more of I guess it's for maybe collectively for staff and the applicant, but it's its utility and transportation design is adequate. So it does say that there's been a preliminary water and sewer plan developed, and I presume that that's more related to the actual connections, right? Where are we going to connect the potable lines? Where are we going to connect the non-pot lines? Are the sewer flows going to enter into a larger interceptor system? But when it comes to actual water supply, I'm wondering if this is going to be a cash in lieu, or if this is going to be the development bringing some amount of water to the town just because of its size. Bertha does normally do cash in lieu, but I didn't know if this would be different because of its size.
So our policy allows for water dedication or cash in lieu at the town's discretion. As you know, we just gave you an update on our current raw water portfolio and our current raw water situation. The development does have some water resources that I think will be dedicated to the town. We're working through some of that with them right now on the non-pot system. They're also helping to support some improvements to our overall non-potable delivery system, including maybe bringing some of our parks onto non-pot that are not currently utilizing non-pot. You're right. The development of this magnitude has a significant impact on our raw water portfolio, right. And all of that is part of that planning process. So we've been having meetings with them about water for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. Our utilities team is very engaged in that. Our water attorney, our water resources engineers, to ensure that we have the water for this development. The update that we gave you towards the end of last year about our current raw water situation included this project and many others that we know are already in the pipeline or that have neighborhood master plans approved as part of our future projections. Yeah. So we feel confident that we can continue to meet the demand both of this project and other projects that are in the pipeline.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I don't expect all the details to be worked out. I was just kind of wondering which way this was headed. Yep. I know that it's really, I guess, the development agreement, which is kind of at the final
Well, we
plat
do,
stage.
in addition to the raw
Yeah.
water resources, and just to follow up on your question, we look at the appropriate sizes of water and sewer lines, their impacts to our treatment plants, our storage facilities, all of those need to be consistent with our long-range utility master plans, making sure that any needed improvements for capacity, either in collection or distribution, or in treatment, are all dealt with as part of the project.
I appreciate that answer. I don't know if you want to add anything or an agreement there. And then for point 6, this is, I guess, maybe probably the most subjective review criteria about kind of desirability of the project. And in the staff notes, it talked a little bit about under the urban residential portion of the project, there would be a diversity of housing products and price points, and under the single family residential, there would be affordable housing options. And so I didn't know if there was anything to elaborate on that in terms of what those price points might be, what type of housing products are, and then I guess what kind of, I know that we're dealing with, a complex of, development, private property rights, can't force anybody to do anything, but what kind of commitment does the town have that those products and affordable or attainable housing products will show up at the end of the day?
Sure, that's a great question. So this project does actually have a requirement to provide 4 different product types. Those product types are specified in the code, and so there are a couple of them that are shown in this first preliminary plat, and then some of those others will come online later on as those future development tracks develop. So there will be a mix of differently sized lots for single-family detached. We will also have small single-family detached. I never remember what the technical name is from the code, but essentially it's a different product type in your code, and it is a significantly smaller single-family detached product. Sometimes they're called like pull-apart townhomes, or detached townhomes, to give you an idea of size. So the mission homes are a really good example of that small single-family detached product type. So both the mission homes, traditional single-family detached front-loaded, and some alley-loaded single-family detached are being provided as part of this first preliminary plat. Townhomes are envisioned, and then some sort of condos or apartments potentially with the future development tracks. Those are envisioned more along 287. We kind of go from lower density south, and then our density gets a little bit more intense centrally, and then it gets a little bit lighter as we move towards the edges so that we're compatible with our surrounding neighborhoods. So we've got, it's either 2 or 3 of our different product types shown now, but there will be another couple coming online with those future development tracks.
Okay, gotcha. I appreciate that explanation, and probably something I should know, but it is codified in terms of the product types.
And we're
I know you
also-
can't like put a price point out there, but
Yeah, and we're
what the
also,
market would bear for those different product types. So, yeah.
yes, we are also required to be consistent with our neighborhood master plan, and that also identified different product types. And so that's, the neighborhood master plan is a well-developed concept, and then we take that to preliminary plat, and we're really adding all the engineering and making sure everything works, and figuring out the details, and figuring out the utilities and how the roads are actually gonna be built. And so, we show the 2 pictures side by side, and we say, they really look the same, right? So, when you're comparing the master plan and a preliminary plat in terms of consistency, they look consistent. But the background piece that you're not seeing up on the screen tonight is the thick stacks of engineering that go behind it to make sure that everything is really working.
Yeah, that makes sense. I appreciate the explanation. Colleague Trustee Wing asked this, but it already left my head. The amenity center at the south end of the proposed Legacy Park, it's kind of blurry on here. That says tracked, but is that included in this phase? It is colored.
So it is colored because we wanted to depict the entire park system for you on here. The amenity portion of the park will be a future development tract. It will need to be entitled via a site development plan, a site plan package. So it's a tract on this plat, and then we would submit a site plan that shows the details and the engineering that goes behind that piece of it. The engineering for the park for everything north of Spartan is included in this preliminary plat.
Gotcha. Do you have any, I guess, can you talk any about timeline of the amenity center relative to these initial 400+ units and when that might come along?
Sure, the amenity center is its own, as you saw how elaborate it was. It's
Yeah,
gonna take a longer time to develop the plans and, you got pools, you got the building, you have it's quite an elaborate, structure and facility there. So that's gonna take a little longer. Our goal is to bring it online at some point during the building of these first 400 something lots. Cause let's face it, that's good marketing. I mean, for people to drive in and see that amenity center is that really gets people excited. So our goal is to bring it online as quickly as we can. We don't have a time frame on that right now, but it's to our own detriment the longer we don't bring it on, because that's really what sells the real estate.
Yeah, beyond just like selling, but the actual experiences that I think it would create and that great viewpoint and
Yes.
everything like that. No, I appreciate that. The only other question I have is, I guess I consider it an amenity, both to the town and to those nearby residents, is just the commercial tracks. And I didn't know if it would be a similar question if you could comment on timing of that. I know that that's obviously market driven. Maybe you could just talk about larger market interest in that corner or in those areas if you're
Sure,
feeling good about that. So-
We've had discussions with several possible owners in there. None of them that we could make public because they don't like you to make those public.
Sure.
I think probably Trustee Wing knows the song and dance better than we do because he was involved in that business. But right now, we're having those discussions. They are tough discussions to have, and we're continuing. We're committed to do that. We think it's going to happen, whether it's one big box or some restaurants and some other stuff. But our goal is to bring some type of big box in there in that northwest parcel. And to the extent that we've spent a lot of money engineering and making sure that everything's set so that when we get somebody who's ready to pull the trigger, we can go. And so I can assure you, we're committed to that.
That's right.
And to add on to that, the plat will actually be the mechanism that will create these tracks, which then allows those tracks to move forward quite quickly once there's interest in the property. So if a commercial developer comes online and is like, hey, I like that tract A, let's start a site plan process. The plat has already created the tract, so it's separated from the rest of the property and it can move forward fairly quickly.
There's nothing to transact right now, but that would create something that could go into a commercial transaction. That makes sense.
It's Kevin Molchan once again. I just wanted to add one point to your question on the retail experience. And that is, frankly, it's been more of a partnership for us because we put it out there and there's a lot of very large, prominent commercial developers, retail developers in the country that understand it's there and have been taking it to people. But frankly, we actually look at ourselves as a partner. Walt has been fantastic to work with at the city. So when we say we're talking to people, probably half of them came from Walt, the other half we've introduced to Walt.
Yeah.
So it's gotten a lot of interest, but that's got to work for our development. It's got to work for the town, frankly, because there's a lot of traffic input, traffic impacts of it and everything. So we're working. It's a blank slate. We're just trying to create a very good picture for people to come here, and we're actually, frankly, pleasantly surprised. We thought it'd be retail interest would be in year 5 or 6. Once you get to 5 or 4 or 600 homes.
Yeah.
But we're actually surprised at how early on we've gotten a lot of interest in the site. So we're hoping that comes together.
And just to add a little color to that, at the staff level, we've met with several retail development companies and retail firms. So it's not just idea or concept. There are a lot of people the best way I could describe it is kicking the tires, right? There's a lot of folks kicking the tires. And nobody's formally submitted anything yet. And until they do, we can't make those things public. But
Sure.
But there is a significant amount of interest.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you saying what you can. I know that those are confidential conversations, but could be, not that the homes aren't exciting, but, in terms of amenity for the town, the commercial could be a big deal. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? Trustee Hardy.
We've covered quite a few of them, but I've got a couple left. For the small business, or for the tracks up there, are you planning on having any sort of retail space that would be incentivized for maybe some local small businesses, not just big national chains?
That would definitely be part of the plan, especially on the east side of the residential, of the retail. If you look at the east side, if you look at where we're separated, we're gonna call it Legacy Park Drive, but call it Gateway, where Gateway comes across.
Okay.
On the east side, that's where, as the trail comes over, that's where we kind of picture some more entertainment opportunities and people being able to sit out with restaurants, small shops. And frankly, we have been talking to people in the town about different opportunities, whether it's a yoga studio or whatever, but that's definitely part of the plan. So.
Just concerned about, making sure it keeps in the price points that small business still has an opportunity to get in there, and it's not gonna be just limited to.
Honestly, anything we can do to show off the existing businesses, birth it in there, is very important for everybody. So we're hoping there'll be a welcome center there too, which we can introduce a lot of the local retailers to people as well.
You kind of segued into my next question, and that's the bicycle connections. How are those connecting on the north? Because it seems like they're kind of off-center. The south one seems kind of directly across from each other, which is down the hill. There was a major accident there quite a few years ago where two of our bicycle boys lost their legs to a car accident because of the visibility of not being able to see over that hill. Are those going to be surface access crossings, or are they going to be more maybe a tunnel or anything like that to make it safer to cross that roadway?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, we heard you on the upper part where we in the village center at the retail, we have the pedestrian promenade that goes through the retail, and then we're building another 10-foot wide path along Welch there to tie in, so that you were concerned earlier about mixing the pedestrians in the promenade area where there was a lot of traffic. We did that, we saw that, and then going through Legacy Park there at Spartan, it would have been a lot less expensive to do a surface crossing there, but we were, again, I mean, you're talking a lot of money to build a.
We're looking at more surface crossing, the crossing that's further south. I believe one of the trails, when we were showing the trail map earlier, it looked like it was crossing just north of the creek.
Across Berthoud Parkway.
At Dry Creek, basically.
Dry Creek.
Yeah.
You showed kind of a connectivity to the trail off of Dry Creek. That's the one I'm asking about, not a Spartan.
Got it. So we anticipate a below grade crossing at Spartan and a surface crossing at Berthoud Parkway.
Okay, so there will be a tunnel down there?
At
At
Spartan.
Spartan,
Oh, at Spartan? Spartan will be a tunnel?
yes.
What about further south at the Dry Creek area?
I believe that's
Where
envisioned
the
as a surface
visibility's gonna
crossing.
be shortened because of the hill. Yeah, street. And then-
One of the things we thought it was important for Spartan is because it's a community with family and kids, and we have the amenity center there. And so it allows a family with younger kids, they can get on their bike, get on the trail right under Spartan and go to the amenity center, to the pool and that sort of thing. And we didn't have to do that, but that just made a lot of sense. So that's where we spent our dollars, was
gonna
that
be
Spartan
roundabout, right?
crossing.
Spartan and Berthoud Parkway?
Correct.
Well, yeah, Spartan through the park is where
The underpass will
the
be located.
underpass would be.
I think, Trustee Hardy, what you're asking, the trail crossing at the south end of the project down by Dry Creek will be at grade. There's likely to be flashing, button activated flashers. At the bottom of the hill is actually the most visibility, right? When you crest the top of the hill is where you start to get some visibility issues, but down at the bottom of Dry Creek, cars should be able to see those lights and those bikes from a long distance. And so we would expect both rapid rectangular flashing beacons and then an at-grade crossing of that trail.
And we'll have flashing beacons up on Welch as well?
Potentially, I don't know that we've identified those yet, as a necessity, but I think that's certainly possible. The trail crossing, as we see it, if you're going across from like west to east, would more likely occur at the light, at Mountain Avenue, so you wouldn't cross at Welch. You'd cross at Mountain Avenue, depending on where you were cutting across.
Okay.
But
Because all that traffic's just gonna get major on Berthoud Park. Just wanna make sure people are able to cross it.
Yep.
That's all I got for now. I'll probably come up with some more later.
Thank you.
Trustee
A lot of mine were already answered, so thank you guys. And once again, this is really small, so I apologize if it's obvious and I just haven't noticed. In the northwest section in, I believe it's tract K, there's single row of homes and then that sort of pink shading. What is envisioned to go in there next to the park?
Okay, I had to put on my glasses for that question. So those are also gonna be residential. They just weren't planned out as part of this preliminary plat. And so the lot size is to be determined.
Roundabout Spartan, that was a question. Is anything envisioned to change with the center, I don't know what to call it, barrier curb impassable object that's on the north end of Berthoud Parkway by Mountain? There's that sort of concrete barrier in the center of the road. Is that planning to be removed, adapted, etc.?
Sure, I'm looking to Ruth. Can you come help with that question?
For clarity, Trustee Ayers, are you talking about the center median that's existing on Berthoud Parkway,
Yeah, across
south
the street
of?
from Christian Brothers.
Yeah, it's kind of weirdly shaped.
Right.
Yeah, it's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a turn lane, but there's
But there's
not.
not.
Yeah, I don't know why it was built that way, but yeah.
I'm gonna step out on a limb here, and Ruth is gonna correct me if I'm wrong, but in this first plat, it's kind of a two-stage improvement. This first plat will include an eastbound right-hand turn lane onto Berthoud Parkway from Mountain as the first stage of that improvement. And then, as the traffic requires it, when some of the northern part and there's more traffic done, then that intersection will have to be reworked. I don't know if that barrier stays or goes at this point. Ruth, are you sure? Do you know about that? Okay. I should let her answer again. I'm gonna stay in my lane, Ruth.
There's no microphone, so I'll just talk. Oh, it's up there. Oh, is it that right there, the purple?
They're all over.
They're all over.
Yeah,
Ooh.
it's all up in the ceiling.
They're not back there, are they? Ruth Rollins with Rollins Consult. I live in Larimer County. So definitely with this first phase, we're not doing anything with that median. This would probably be more of a town, that median is there because Welch is so close to Mountain that we need to restrict some of those movements the way it is today. Ultimately, that intersection, as Don said, very good job, Don, will be improved with a left turn lane, a through lane, and a right turn lane in all of the directions. So we'll have to see at that time what happens with that median. And that's why we do, we do several traffic studies as things progress, and we have occupied homes, right? So we do new counts and we can reassess at that time. So, but with the first phase, it would not be changing.
Thank you.
And if I may, Mayor Kirschbeck and members of the Town Board of Trustees, some of those triggering events and timing and phasing will be included in the development agreement. So as we progress to that final plat, should you approve the preliminary plat, those items will be included with a phasing plan.
And we do have a paving project planned in the next 2 years on Berthoud Parkway south of Welch, a repaving. So as you know, we invest about $1.5 million a year in repaving throughout town. We've made some pretty significant progress. Berthoud Parkway is one of our worst roads in town now that we got Second Street cleaned up, which was by far the worst street in town. And so we have talked about internally correcting at least that weird jog of curb when we do that paving project. I don't know, from a traffic standpoint, the median doesn't need to be changed, but that in and of itself is kind of a weird piece, and we'd like to fix that when we go back and do that repaving work.
My last question might be it might be for a different meeting, but I just want to make sure, because I don't, once again, it's small, so I apologize if I'm just overlooking it. The trail system that's envisioned runs from the corner of Mountain and Berthoud through that tract in the northeast corner, down through Legacy Park, out to the bottom. I think I remember it going, taking a jog to the west, going around those white lots in the south. Is that part of this phase, or is that a triggering event as well? Because I think you said the park north of Spartan is envisioned to be
The design
finalized,
of the park
right,
north
but
of
not
Spartan is
necessarily
included.
south. So is that trail connection south to the park, and then the I guess the long kind of winding way through Legacy Park, that section that goes from the intersection of the park and Spartan down around those homes and then out through the Dry Creek? Would that be at a future plat? Is that a final plat issue? Is it something that just isn't designed yet because of the early phase?
Right, so it is a future plat issue. The preliminary plat looks at a bigger area of the property. So we've got all the lots we're proposing now, plus all of the future development tracts and all of the open space. This will likely be broken down into some smaller final plats. And so the
things that are, I'm sorry to interrupt, the pieces of this that are still color in the south section below Spartan, those outlots, I guess, and some of those tracts, those are up for platting today, or no? Is my question, because you said
Yes. Yes, so everything that you see in color is part of the preliminary plat. That is correct. And so the design in these areas is included as part of the preliminary plat. When we get to final platting, if the preliminary plat is approved, then this may, and we haven't finalized that yet because we're still in preliminary, but there may be multiple final plats. And so you may see a portion of the trail come online with a plat, and then as that next final plat comes on, the next portion of the trail would come on. So it's typical with any of these regional trails that as your final plats come online, it's built in phases just like the rest of the community is built in phases, rather than the entire trail going in advance of the development. And there's reasons for that, right? I mean, it's kind of where your construction is mobilized, but also it's protection of the trail. It's the same reason, excuse me, that we don't build open spaces, far away from where the rest of the development is coming, because you wanna get all the heavy construction done and then go in and fill in your landscape and your trails and things like that, so they're not damaged.
Yeah, thank you. I was a little confused just because some of the tracts are completely blank, and then some of the tracts seem like they have a vision for what they're going to look like, and I was just kind of confused as to how the overall preliminary plat was going to be segmented later on. I just wanted to make sure that those connections were.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question.
I don't think I have any. I'm done. Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee to kind of piggyback on Trustee Kurtz's comment, I was wondering why you were doing the residential instead of the commercial from a cadence standpoint, but it sounds like your answer was if the market bears it, you would move on those other tracks if there was commercial interest. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so it's very feasible that, we could be working on the final plat for this residential and have a commercial developer that's ready to go, and we could be submitting and running a site plan for commercial concurrently.
And I've got a 230-page deck here that came with our information, but I was just wondering, instead of me mining for it, do you know how many acres tract A is?
No, because I can't read the labels that are this small.
It's the one up in the corner. Okay.
The main corner one. Yeah.
It's got to be in the
northwest.
body of this. I just thought you might have an idea.
We can get it for you.
Trustee Meeting, I have the plat pulled up and you said track day.
Yep,
I can look that up, right? So on track day, the table, and hopefully this is the land use summary table, indicates that track day is 17.27 acres.
okay, great, thanks.
Thank you, Todd.
And then, just so I understood you correctly, did you say that the tunnel is going under Spartan inside the neighborhood?
Yes.
That's correct.
So right where the park comes down, it will connect the trail from north of Spartan in the park
Okay.
to south of Spartan in the park area.
Doesn't seem like a super heavy traffic area, but I'm sure you've done your studies on that.
Yeah, I think Spartan Avenue, when that connection occurs to 287, will be a very heavily trafficked road.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because Spartan Avenue will also cross the railroad tracks to the east and all the way to County Line Road. So Spartan Avenue will
Okay.
be a major collector or an arterial road all the way from County Line Road on the far east end of what's currently developed in town, all the way to 287.
Okay. And my last question is, so, the color, this preliminary plat, and I just may not know the cadence, maybe I can use some assistance on this one. So what's our guarantee as we approve this, that the amenities get done? Because that's a heavy lift. So can someone tie that together for me?
So this goes back to that neighborhood master plan, and it's why the neighborhood master plan is an important part of your process, is because we define a lot of the things. It's kind of our commitment to the town as part of that neighborhood master plan of what we're going to provide. So when we submit a preliminary plat, and then when we submit a final plat or a site plan, staff continues to go back to that neighborhood master plan and say, is it in conformance with?
Okay,
We specifically identified the amenity center to include a pool and a clubhouse, and therefore they will have to be included in future development.
so in the final plat, that kind of detail starts to come?
The amenity center would be a separate site plan that would be submitted, just that area would be a separate site plan that would go through the entitlement process with staff. If for some reason, and we are not planning on this, but if for some reason the team changed directions and was like, we don't want to include a clubhouse or a pool anymore, then
Who's
I
the
would,
team?
the developer.
Okay,
Then I would expect that staff would turn around and say, well, you'll need to submit a new neighborhood master plan and take that through the process and to the board to decide if they'll approve it or not.
but we've already approved this, and so houses are already being built and everything's being done. And now there's a change in direction or ideology, and we don't necessarily have any
So-
leverage on that subject?
So the way, if you look at other developments, Vantage, Farmstead are good examples. Both those have amenity centers and pools that were part of the second or third. And Vantage is probably in the fourth phase of the Vantage subdivision. And so sometimes it's a timing issue. Those are very expensive improvements, as you can imagine, in the $20 to $30 million range. Potentially based on their overall scope. And so the development agreement process outlines the timing of required amenities in each final plat. And so we expect final plats to be relatively standalone in their suitability, but if a final plat includes 100 lots, that's probably not enough to justify a $20 million amenity center and pool. And so that development agreement process is where that timing gets outlined, and then surety is posted by the developer, basically an insurance policy that those improvements are gonna get constructed, and if they don't, the town gets to take that money and go do it ourselves. And so there are triggers, there is timing that's negotiated as part of that development agreement process, but there are mechanisms in place for us to ensure that those improvements ultimately get built.
And actually, they'll probably be funded through the metro district, so bonds will be issued eventually.
Yes.
To support that.
That's typical.
If I could make one additional point on that to support it, actually 2 points very quickly. Number one is we also have a promise, one of our builders is here, David Gregg. So when we go under contract with David Gregg and the other builders, we're gonna be under contract saying what we're providing, including amenity center, because they need that for their home buyers. We are right now spending dollars on designing that amenity center. It will be built. We need it. But I also want to make one very big point, which is we've been kind of dating for 4.5 years. Now we're getting married. This project does not support, if we had to build everything we have to build for this first phase and leave after 439 lots, we lose money. We don't make money because there's so many large master improvements we have to build in this first phase that we're kind of juggling, that it really takes this entire development coming together. That's why we're your partner for the next 10 years on this project, and whether it's the retail or how we build out the rest of the residential, it's us working together, because we can't afford, we wouldn't be doing this project if it was 439 lots that are in this first phase. We just couldn't afford all the improvements. So
On that point, the commercial lots, would you anticipate selling those?
we would anticipate there are some large users that will want to own their parcels.
Okay.
What we'd anticipate doing is working with one large retail developer. So you could, in a general sense, if the market was today's market, you may see a big box on the west side of Legacy Park with restaurants, et cetera, as out parcels in the front, and then more community residential retail on the east side. But I'm gonna tell you one thing too, though, is I've got a control freak for a partner, Don, so he's got, we're gonna maintain that entry at Gateway. It's gonna look beautiful. And so that's the entry to the community. So that'll be beautiful. And as I say, so you may see more big box on the west. And as I say, the community retail on the east. But that's what we're currently envisioning.
But, and I'll wrap it up with this, but just to say hypothetically, in left field, it's a grocer. Let's just say that, right? So now you're talking semis driving in there. So would you anticipate off of track A an access to Mountain, or do you think these semis would drive through that entryway? And I'm probably getting way ahead of stuff, but
A
since you kind of,
little ahead, and Don will elaborate on that, but we've actually paid engineers to figure out how deliveries would be accessed and everything else. So we've worked with a couple of retail providers with their engineers on how that could be accomplished, and we're working with the town on that as well, so.
Okay.
And there would be a requirement for a traffic study with that site plan as well that the town would evaluate.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had one more.
Great.
With the 5 metro districts that were approved, how do they play a role in here? Where do those boundaries get redefined? Because it was just 5 lots, and the large western tract, I think, is where you put those 5 metro districts temporarily, but is this 1 metro district? Is it 2?
Kevin Mulshine, once again, right now, we believe this 439 lots will be 1 metro district. So as I say, the flexibility will be, my guess is, if we get a big retail user, commercial, they're not gonna wanna be in with residents in a district that's controlled by residents. So they'll have their own district to control their own access, assets and that. But this community, for these 439, will probably be 1 metro district, obviously controlled by the residents.
I don't have any questions anymore. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll open up the public hearing. Deputy Clerk. If there's any signed up, I'll call your name. If you come to the front, state your name and address again. And if you please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Thank you. I'll start off with David Gregg.
Clear the deck for you, David. Thanks.
Hello, Mayor Karspeck and trustees. Thanks for having us. I'm David Gregg, 340 Mountain Avenue, owner and co-owner of Mission Homes, Colorado. I know some of you are very familiar with us, but if any of you are not, we are Bertha's homegrown, hometown, attainable housing builder. We've built 88 affordable, attainable cottages in the Prairie Star subdivision. I'd be happy to host any of you if you'd ever like to go out and see those. And we've been very honored to have been asked to be included in this project, so we can bring our attainable priced cottages to this first filing. In considering tonight's action, it's a pretty simple evening, I guess, for all of us, because this, as it was stated by staff, is in substantial compliance with the neighborhood master plan. That makes your job easy, and I think the developer is doing a good job as well. And the town, ourselves at Mission Homes, as well as the Ludlow family, is very lucky to have this particular developer running this project. This developer cares about the outcome, cares about the quality. And one thing in particular that I'd like to mention And it's what really opens the door for us to be able to come in here and others to build other types of affordable product is the diversity. It was mentioned there was a requirement for 4 types of product, and I think I count 6 or 7. A tremendously diverse project, and I think that bodes really well for the town. And the reason for that is that diversity and density is what allows us to come in and have that opportunity to provide some attainable and affordable housing for Berthoud. And I don't think I need to tell anybody here, we're sort of in crisis situation right now when it comes to housing affordability. I hope you all had a chance to look at the housing needs assessment that was done for the town. It was presented to the Planning Commission. I was able to see and learn about it then. Page after page after page of evidence of the issue, and average home price now pushing $700,000, and there's just no affordability left. I'd like to talk about who we build for. We build homes for the people that patrol your streets, that teach your children, that preach in your churches. There is an entire generation of young adults right now who either grew up in Berthoud, graduated from Berthoud schools, and now can't afford to live in Berthoud, their hometown. There is also a lot of young adults, again, a whole generation working in Berthoud right now that want to provide homes for those people. That's our mission, that's our joy, is to be able to provide affordable, attainable homes for those citizens. And in going through some of the comments that were submitted for this project, that were in your packets.
Mr. Gregg, we're approaching that 3 minutes here.
All right, I'll just say, losing the hometown feel was mentioned often by people worried about this project and others. And I would just like to tell you that I believe that it's mandatory, if you're going to maintain the hometown feel, that you provide housing for all.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. I have to be fair to everyone. Appreciate it. DJ Gregg?
Mayor, trustees. My name is DJ Gregg, 340 Mountain Avenue. Believe it or not, we're related. I'm a partner with Mission Homes Colorado, and he mentioned during his comment an affordable housing crisis, and I just want to reiterate that. It's a true crisis. We don't call it the affordable housing inconvenience or the affordable housing problem. Simply put, it's needs all hands on deck to solve. The cost of living in Berthoud is rising at an alarming rate. Much of it's artificial. It's driven by a scarcity of housing options, which projects like Legacy Park can fix, and they can address that. Experts on the issue of affordable housing routinely point to a simple economic imbalance of supply and demand. We're just not providing enough housing to meet the needs of our community and to keep price appreciation in check. Meanwhile, the projects which are being approved, they're catering to a wealthier client and leaving a void for first-time home buyers and folks who otherwise, or I guess whose households don't exceed the area median income. So again, simply put, that's half of all households, more than that can't afford a house. You look at the pricing of the average home in Berthoud, and we're talking 120% plus AMI to be able to afford it. Folks impacted most by this void, we call them the missing middle. Those are the ones who already call Berthoud their hometown. They're people like me that were born and raised here, but have no way to find a place to call home after they've left the nest. They're people that have been widowed or divorced, and they suddenly find themselves in need of a smaller home or something that they can afford. People that have rented in Longmont or Loveland for years and just haven't been able to find that place in the town that they work. I sat across the closing table from over 100 purchasers of our cottage-style homes, and I've heard countless stories from people trying to stay connected to their roots here. They're not out-of-state vacation home purchasers or investors. These are our children, our siblings, and our neighbors. And they're hardworking families that just want to continue to build their lives here. Time and time again, I've heard families say that if they couldn't find something attainable here, their only options were going out east or moving out of state or just giving up on the dream of owning a home. These are the people that this project is for. By approving Legacy Park, we can create a future that Berthoud remains a town for everyone and not just those that can afford $1 million house. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Tiffany Brody.
Tiffany Brody, 1315 Burt Avenue. Good evening, Mayor Karspeck and trustees. I stand before you today as a community resident, a licensed realtor, and as the executive director for Berthoud Habitat for Humanity. In doing so, I respectfully ask for your consideration of approval for Legacy Park preliminary plat. The project overall is one that incorporates different housing types, as we've talked about, resulting in residential diversity, and it is sure, because of the amenities in the plan, to cultivate community within community. Your support is a step in the right direction, as we are in desperate need of increasing supply across the housing continuum here in Berthoud. Everybody deserves a safe and decent and affordable place to rest their head, raise their families, make memories, and weather the ups and downs that this life brings each and every one of us. Shelter is one of the 4 basic needs of humanity, and the impact of homeownership is truly transformational, impacting areas of health, financial stability, education, and the workforce. Housing plays a critical role in building and maintaining strong, healthy, and vibrant, stable communities. Across the nation, as mentioned here this evening, we are experiencing a housing crisis. Statewide in Colorado, we have a housing stock deficit to the tune of 176,000 units, of which would require 54,000 units to be produced in the state just to fill that gap. And that doesn't include the increase that we have moving into this area. Furthermore, 1 in 7 Colorado families are paying more than 50% of their income on housing, which results in them being severely cost burdened. According to the Common Sense Institute report, as of June of 2024, the median value of housing has increased since 2010 by 132%, whereas in contrast, the median household income has increased only 65% over that same period of time. 42% of households cannot afford a home above $300,000, yet only 16% of homes are valued at $300,000 or less. So as a community, we must cultivate opportunities for individuals to be able to live and work in the same community. As per the data collected in the Housing Needs Assessment by Ayers Associates, only 8% of our residents here in Berthoud can live and work in our community. Imagine if our essential workers, teachers, firefighters, and those who provide us meals when we go out to dinner could actually live in this community, not to mention the healthcare workers. So our market has been oversupplying housing at higher price ranges, with the majority of our which the majority of our community cannot afford. I recently pulled data for a meeting on December 20th, and at that time, the average home price in our town was $639,000. We need more housing options, just to simplify, not only for the first-time home buyers and for the seniors that need and want to downsize, but everybody in between. So from a personal perspective, my husband and I.
We hit our 3-minute mark here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have no one else signed up. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, public comment portion, bringing it back to the board. The applicant has an opportunity for a rebuttal. If you'd like to come back up, you don't have to. I don't know if you'll be reviewing
I don't
anything.
think we have anything,
Okay.
but we're good. All right, you have any more questions, be glad to answer.
Any final trustees before moving?
One last question that came up. The housing shortage is across the country, and it's super severe. Obviously, what's going on in California right now. But, private equity firms are buying up essentially everything that comes on the market. They have been for years, especially when interest rates are so low, but a lot of them are paying cash. Big corporations are doing the same thing. Is there any controls on the number of these homes that can turn into rentals? Is there any governance on that, on how many have to be privately owned versus anybody coming in and then turning them into rentals?
We usually, in most communities, put in our covenants and restrictions, some type of restriction on rental. There is a need for rental, and there will probably be some rental in here, especially in the more westerly area where there could be apartments or something like that. But our MO and our builder stable is pretty much homes for sale. So you never say never, but that's not our goal. That's not us creating community.
Do you have a legal right to control that in any way, shape, or form?
You have a legal right to, at the builder level, but after the home changes hands, you can't stop the next person in from selling it to, that I know of.
But the initial purchase, you're saying you would have some controls
Yes.
on Wall Street guys not coming in and buying up a whole block, that kind of thing?
Correct.
Thank you.
Question, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to deliberation right now. We all feel pretty good? Anything, conditions or, well, pretty straightforward on this?
Yeah.
I mean, many people have said it already, right? But it has a nice mixture of home types. There's open space everywhere. It's different in that it is sort of focused, from this 30,000 foot picture, it seems to be focused around community. There's a central park. There are community centers. The connections to Spartan and Berkeley Parkway on 287 are adding extra exits and entrances to the town. There's the commercial on the north end, which is possibly to bring in nationwide companies, but also leaves a lot of space for local, regional communities that are accessible by walking, by biking, by everyone in the town, but also by the community itself. It's located on the thoroughfare of town, close to the park. I think a lot of effort has been made to satisfy the concerns of the neighbors, it seems to me, from the presentations and from the way that the community members have spoken up today. It satisfies the requirements set forth in reviewing. So I think it looks pretty good.
Mayor Karsten?
Yes.
I thought that Trustee Ayers did a great job of referencing back to the criteria. And we had that discussion about how your deliberations could be structured by referral to the criteria. So I would just bring that up for what it's worth at this point.
So I concur with everything Trustee Ayers said, and I just want to put this out there because it ties in with a lot of what was discussed by a number of people, the affordable housing part. And I'm just, not that this will change anything, but I think we need to be cognizant of it, the affordable housing. You do a metro district, you're doubling the property tax. It just is what it is. And so as we talk about affordability and all this stuff, we are layering on, and I don't know if there's a solution. I just putting it out there. It is an actual cost, significant to owning a home. Something to keep on our radar.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it sounds like you're in support too. Trustee Kurtz, you feel pretty good?
Yeah, no, my comments and my questions were addressed in reference to the criteria during the previous question session.
Awesome. Trustee Hardy, you feel good too? Yeah. Okay. Anyone like to move on resolution 2025-02?
Yeah, I'll move on. I move to approve resolution 2025-02, an ordinance of the Town of Berthoud Board of Trustees approving a preliminary plat for development known as the Legacy Park Development in the Town of Berthoud.
Trustee Wing has moved on this. Clerk Trustee Ayers has seconded. Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Trustee Hardy?
Yes.
Trustee Wing?
Yes.
Trustee Kurtz?
Yes.
Trustee Ayers?
Yes.
Mayor Karspek?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone who stuck around for this. Let's go ahead and take let's do a 5-minute break here. Then we'll go into our branding. see you. All right, thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting back to order, and we will move on. So we are gonna hit our final item tonight, which is gonna be our final public item, which is gonna be the community branding. We have our public information officer, Stephanie Horvath here. Stephanie, I know I got your title wrong. What is your title?
I'm the community engagement manager.
Thank you.
Wow.
Okay.
Right?
I don't remember that. Colin, yours changed, so.
You gotta change the placard.
In fairness, so did Stephanie's. So Stephanie was our community outreach specialist, and she's now our community engagement manager. We're expanding her role and her department as well, so.
Awesome, congrats to both.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, trustees. I am Stephanie Horvath, as we've established, the community engagement manager for the town of Berthoud. To begin the process of analyzing and refreshing the town's branding strategy, we put out a request for proposal in November looking for a marketing firm to do a brand assessment for the town of Berthoud. From that RFP, we received 16 proposals.
Wow.
Right? From the 16 proposals, we narrowed down to 4 to invite for interviews. And from those 4, we picked one that we would like to move forward with, and that's Chandler Things. Their proposal was included in your packets tonight, I believe. I know we all have different backgrounds, so I do want to take a second to clarify that rebranding municipality is not just replacing the artwork with new artwork. It's just, I just want to clarify that because branding, everyone thinks logo. The first step, and this is a step that we're asking to move forward with, we'll assess who we are as a town. There'll be focus groups, there'll be town halls, there'll be one-on-one interviews and surveys. We're gonna measure how people would describe Berthoud, our greatest assets, our current reputation, and whether they would recommend this as a place to live, to do business, and to visit. In 2020, our population was just over 10,000 people with the median annual household income of $64,000. Today, we have a population of about 13,000 with a median annual household income of $111,000. That's a substantial shift. Does the garden spot still resonate with our community? That's what we want to kind of find out. Berthoud is getting better and better, and it is a desirable place to live with good schools, beautiful parks, amenities, and a wonderful downtown. Branding helps us encapsulate the intangible elements that make Berthoud what it is, so we can communicate it with the rest of the world. This stage is not about the logo. It'll be figuring out the voice that we want the town to have, and through consistent messaging, it'll help us highlight the best of our town. So that's my spiel. So we're asking that you approve Chris to go ahead with the first stage of our branding reassessment.
And if I may, Mayor Karsbeck, I want to reiterate some of the things that Stephanie said, but this brand assessment is not about a logo, it's not about a tagline, it's not about signage, it's not about photos, it's about who are we as a community. And can we distill out from all of this community feedback, surveys, focus groups, one-on-ones, community meetings, can we distill out what is that one thing that sets us apart as a community, right? And everybody wants to jump to the logo, and I think that will come in time. But ultimately, the logo is really irrelevant if there isn't something that resonates with residents, consumers, visitors behind that. It doesn't mean that we're going to change. We may not. In terms of the way that we present ourselves, that may or may not change. What I hope it does is bring some clarity and consistency in messaging, imaging, the way that we talk about ourselves, the language that we use, as we promote to both folks that already live here, folks that are visiting, businesses that are starting. And one thing that's really unique about community branding, we don't control our product, right? We have influence over our product, and we have.
Like a transformer.
It does, yeah. That's the drones.
Yeah. I'm gonna be up all night now.
But you know, our community controls our brand, right? And our brand is just our reputation. That's all it is. And so we want to uncover that, both with people that already live here and people that are not from here. And we all have interesting anecdotes about what people think about our town. both people that live here, and those opinions are significantly varied based on who you talk to, but also from people that don't live here, people that run businesses here, but they don't live here. And so we just want to gather all that together as part of this assessment and bring that back to you. This is one of your strategic goals that you set for the town, was a new or updated brand strategy. We feel like this assessment is the right first step. Once we do that, we'll create a brand narrative that everybody in this room agrees to, and then we'll go into the creative design process.
Excellent. Any questions?
Yeah.
We don't have anything, like, I don't know if you meant to, or this is deliberate, but we don't have anything on our screen here.
Are you gonna do any kind of presentation on any of this slides?
No, everything
Okay,
was
fine.
included in the packet.
Right, but for the audience here, so we don't have anything to go over here. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna reiterate, the logo is almost irrelevant. It's one of the phrases is, how do we bring it to life? What does that mean? How do we bring it to life, right? And you've got one of your slides here, I just hit on it, and it says the brand experience, feel, see, smell, taste, hear. And if I were to say to this room, when I say Whole Foods, what comes to mind? Right?
Healthy food.
And all kind, right, whether it's friendly and fresh, and maybe even price, right? Whole checkbook or whatever, right? Is what, but I think this piece is incredibly important for our future and what we're planning on. And I think we, as a group, there's probably very few things that are as important as us being aligned on what our brand is, because when we talk about neighborhoods and buildings and anything else we're approving and intersections, all of that comes back to the brand. And it should be our guiding voice. And it's a little bit of, what do we want to be when we grow up, right? What is our brand? What would we be proud of? You know, are we okay with this? And if our brand is X, then are we accepting things in our community, our town, that do not live up to what our brand is that we all believe in? So how do we fix that? How do we bring that to life on actually, and as we grow and we're doing things like the rec center, right? I think that represents our brand so well, and some of the other things we're talking about. But I also think we need to look at existing things. And yes, the community is what the community is, but I think we shape the brand. And then we incorporate that into zoning and our laws and the things, you know, we accept from all kinds of things. So I don't mean to pontificate, just go on and on here, but we shouldn't underestimate how important this is, because I sincerely think that this shapes the future of our town.
I come from a private sector, so I worked at Cleveland Golf for years as a public relations and advertising manager, and we did a rebrand. It is very important. So I do take it very seriously.
And it's all encompassing, right? And I'm gonna stray just a little, but we become the brand of the town. What does that mean? How we look, how we conduct ourselves, how we speak, how these meetings are conducted, how we interface with the community. That's a component of our brand, and we become part of that. And those things are they're important.
If I could share one little story, because I went through a big community rebrand in the community that I lived in before. It's a small community in the mountains, surrounded by the valley on one side and the desert on the other, right? But what is unique about it is there's no public land. So everybody described Tehachapi, California as a mountain town. But if you lived there, you just saw the mountains from a distance, right? There's no hiking trails, there's no mountain lakes. It's all private land. And if you came from out of the community, you're like, well, this is cool, it's in the mountains, but this isn't a mountain town. And through that branding initiative, one of the things that came up was, if we're going to continue to promote ourselves as a mountain town, and that was unique and different because it's desert on one side, valley on the other, right? It's unique in the region. Then how do we create that mountain experience, right? So there was some element of aspiration to it. We were who we were, but then there was a huge focus on cycling. Cycling you can do on the road. And you can do that in the mountains much differently than you can in the valley or in the desert. There's a huge investment in mountain bike trails. Now there's 30 plus miles of mountain bike trails in Tehachapi on private land, but agreements were negotiated to make that happen. It did drive change in the way the community operated to reinforce what was the town's brand identity, right? People saw it as a mountain town, you just couldn't get that authentic experience. So anyway, I just share that as, to kind of reinforce what I think Trustee Wing was describing. We have to be who we are, it has to resonate, it has to be real, but there should be some element of aspiration to it too.
Yeah, I love the garden spot, but I'm open to asking others if they love it too, and I'll accept if it's not what it is.
But even if people love it, but they can't describe what it is.
Exactly.
Maybe we can figure out ways to
Hanging
strengthen that.
baskets on mountains.
Hanging baskets.
That's what I'm
There's
getting at.
more than that though, right?
We say we are the garden spot,
Yeah.
and we have to act towards it, right?
Absolutely, and I
That's what
think,
we should-
you know, we talked about that a little bit with the Arboretum, you know. One of the reasons why I'll continue to call it the garden spot Arboretum until somebody tells me I'm not allowed to. But that's really what drove a lot of that thought process. We're a Tree City USA, we have a Tree City USA designation, but we're also the garden spot. How do we create an authentic garden experience? Pollinator gardens is a mandate in our code. That's because we're the garden spot. And so new developments that include pollinator palettes, like they talked about at Legacy Park, that's to stress the importance of gardens in our community. I wouldn't say that we're necessarily gonna go away from that. Maybe we do, because maybe that resonates with some of us and everybody else goes, that means nothing to me, and I think there's other ways we can grow.
I feel like I should plug the conservation gardens at Northern Water.
Absolutely, conservation gardens at Northern Water, absolutely, great
But
example.
that probably originated, I'm guessing, maybe because of all the agriculture we had, so that became the garden.
Change
Now,
point.
does it still mean that 100 years later, right? Or now is it something else we need to prime, right, to really drive that home?
Great. So this will be interviews with inside, outside stakeholders, residents, business owners.
Surveys, one-on-ones.
$30,000 that was set aside in 2025, and the rebranding itself would be another 35 to 40,000.
Potentially, it depends. So we may or may not choose to hire this firm to do the graphic design and the creative work. We might. I don't think there's any reason not to. They're certainly capable. But that can be a second phase, and we can choose how we want to proceed from there. So we think that creative design process is probably $30,000. So yeah, so 30,000 for the assessment, and probably between 15 and 30, depending on how we proceed and who we hire, for what might ultimately be the creative design. When they do that, it's not just a logo, right? They're creating potential advertising. They're doing signage concepts. They're doing new business cards and letterhead and website concepts. I mean, you know, there's a lot more to it than just drawing a logo, if that makes sense.
Right, I like the idea you and I talking about this a little earlier about what really appeals to me is bringing in the other nonprofits in here, so we kind of share this theme. Right?
Yep.
I see your point. So it doesn't mean we'll always follow along with it, but I see your point that this kind of creates a common.
And I think, you know, it's important to us, we've talked about it a lot, that this become a community brand, right? So we see it as the city, and that's important because the town itself is its own organization, but we represent something bigger than that. But we don't have control over it all, right? Nonprofits, the schools, businesses, we want them to adopt at least, they don't have to adopt a logo, but we want them to adopt that brand identity and find ways to strengthen our brand identity in partnership with us, whether it's through events that they run or their own marketing materials, or the built environment in their stores or their schools or their landscapes. You know, how can we make this more of a community brand than just this isn't just a logo for the town of Berthoud, if that makes sense.
If two people were talking in a restaurant at another town and somebody brings up Berthoud, if branding is done properly, and it doesn't happen overnight, but someone brings up Berthoud and the other person says, "Oh yeah, Berthoud." Exactly. But it's such a you know what? It's so clean, and have you ever seen how friendly everybody is? And they've got all this stuff going on, and they do this and they do that and they do the fireworks, and yeah, what a great community, what a great town. That's branding. What do you stand for?
It said that one of our claim to fame was the Wayside Inn with its fried chicken.
You prepared to say small town.
Well, 100%. And I think the beauty of this process, and you know, this is something else we've talked about. We even talked about it with the trustees and others. The idea of Berthoud being a charming small town is part of our identity. When you ask people what that actually means, it gives them a lot of pause. We asked the downtown business, some members of the downtown business collaborative that were helping us with the BDA. I posed that question to them. You know, we love the small town charm of Berthoud. What does that actually mean to you? What would you point to that's evidence of that? And more than just a feeling, hey, neighbor to neighbor, all that's great, but what do we actually do in the built environment, in our programs, in our events, in the things that people experience every day? How does that reinforce that small town feel? And that's a very interesting question. And I think that there's some nuggets in there when we ask a whole bunch of people that we're gonna distill out and everybody's gonna go, yep, that makes sense. And hopefully when we uncover this brand identity, it's gonna resonate with everybody. They're all gonna get it. You know, you'll hear it and you'll go, yep, that's it.
The quaint little homes, when you drive on some of the streets, that feels like Mayberry, that feels like a small town. An A&W. An A&W isn't, that's, you're not finding a lot of those in New York City. A drive-up A&W, right? And that's a small town thing. Parking on Main Street, that's not a thing in big town, big cities. So there's a lot of these little small town things that we do have. Walking in and getting some service in this building. You know, you can't even talk to humans a lot of times anymore. You gotta do everything you do, right? Everything's online or a phone call. So there is a lot of charm that we probably aren't even cognizant of that are reinforcing our small town. The park we just did.
What we aim for, so if we hit that small town charm, we're gonna have to find a way to actually hit that.
100%.
Or if garden spot, it remains, however this goes.
Yeah.
We wanna build on it.
I did have
I have a question.
Yeah.
Whoever's first.
Yeah, he rang the buzzer first.
Can you, I guess, what stood out about this firm over some of the other firms that caused the selection?
There were a lot that had great logos but had no municipal experience. And being, like Chris said, we don't own the brand. It's not like Jaguar just rolled out that ugly thing and now they have to deal with it. That's their problem. If we don't do the right steps and don't do it the right way, it could be a catastrophe. So we want someone that has municipal experience, that we have people in a community who tend to take over things. So we wanted, like, how do you deal with a focus group where you have one person who's dominant? They answered all the questions really well. They have years of experience at other firms too. So for all the firms that came in, they had the experience, they answered all the questions the way we were hoping, you know, and they gave us some ideas that we hadn't thought of. So for all the ones, they're the ones we really do like.
Well, just the number of towns that they've done. Like here, I lived in Elk River. Elk River's one of the towns. I know Cottage Grove like the back of my hand, right? So
it's Elk River's brand.
They've.
What's the brand?
Well, it probably happened after I left.
Oh, no. I was gonna say, what do you think of?
Elk River sits on the Mississippi River.
Okay.
So it's kind of a river town.
River town, okay.
And it's rural. It's you know, quite a ways out of the Twin Cities. But I mean, my gosh, all that they've done an incredible amount of other towns.
Yeah, they specialize in that, so that was kind of nice too. Instead of, well, we're gonna stick our toe in the water and see how it goes. We don't want to be the guinea pig.
My question was actually kind of related to the geography of their experience, and so maybe folks who specialize in municipal branding are so limited that, you know, we're just grateful to be working for them. But I noticed that in Colorado, granted it's Longmont, you know, that's great, that's right down the road, but you must have got the sense that they kind of like understood Colorado, even though we would be their second kind of client.
This is that Guide. Guide was the second one that were.
Chandler Thinks has worked with Longmont, and so they did have some experience here locally. They actually have folks on their team that have homes here or that have lived here. So you know they understand Colorado, and again, I think what really stood out from our perspective was just their experience with municipal branding. We were not looking for somebody that specialized in business or product branding, because we feel like that's different. and having been through this before firsthand, it is different. And so, you know, Stephanie's been through it on the product and corporate side, and I've been through it on the municipal side, and I think,
Yeah.
community branding is unique.
Yeah, and totally trust Charles' decision. I was just kind of curious,
Yeah.
looking at the geographies.
And speaking on the geography as well, I've been to all of the towns in Georgia and Texas that are on their list, and most of them are small towns, right? So it's not necessarily a Colorado
Good point.
motif, but for instance, in Georgia, Dahlonega is a mountain German town, kind of, right? It's a tourist attraction, whatever, but it's got Bavarian houses and pretzels. It's a mountain town.
Like there's a town in Washington State that's kind of like that.
Macon, Perry, Smyrna, Suwannee in Texas, Galveston Island, Katy, Sugarland. They are small towns that sort of are beginning or had begun to develop when I was there. So the size of the towns that they've worked with seem at least similar in feel to some of the things that Berthoud is experiencing. So.
Cool.
Very cool. Any more questions?
No.
Briefly over to the public. Anyone want to speak to this? All right. Sounds like we're all in support. Would anyone like to move on? Move to authorize.
I can move. So I move to authorize the town administrator to engage with Chandler Thinks for services as provided in the brand assessment proposal.
All right. Trustee Kurtz seconded, or moved, Trustee Hardy has seconded. Clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wing?
Yes.
Trustee Ayers?
Yes.
Trustee Kurtz?
Yes.
Trustee Hardy?
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck?
Yes. Okay. That concludes our regular meeting tonight. Thank you, everyone. We're not taking action, right? Right? We are?
No,
Okay.
sorry.
All right, so we'll do reports and then we'll adjourn, go and do an executive session. So, having said that, I'll look right to left. Let's start out with Trustee Wing here.
Pass.
Pass. Trustee Ayers?
Court took the month off, so I don't have anything from them. I had something in the back of my brain that I wanted to report, but I may not remember what it was. So it's gonna have to wait. Yeah, it'll come back to me as soon as we're done.
Trustee Hardy?
One question, been some chatter, and Chris is hiding over there. The new signs for 287 and coming in from the east.
Sorry, those,
When are we getting the signs up?
we meant to bring that up during the branding conversation. They were supposed to be installed on December 18th. They are hand painted. And the painter was sick for weeks. He's an older gentleman, as I understand it. One of them has been painted. It looks beautiful in photos. We're waiting on the other two. They are still supposed to be complete and installed before the end of this month. So the sign company understands that they are a significant priority to us. It's been very frustrating, but I think they're gonna be great.
Got a story to it, hand painted?
They are hand painted, they're gorgeous, yeah. So
So later this month.
it should be installed later this month.
And then the next one is just kind of, I don't know if I should do this by email or if we can do it here. But I know I've spoke to a couple of you about, individually about bringing back and just doing a quick reglance at the Metro District policy. And maybe spruce it up a little bit and raise that bar just a little bit and tighten a few things up. One point was made at the Ludlow the Metro Districts about something about control districts not being defined correctly, so I was gonna ask Aaron about that and maybe we can take that fixed. Whatever that problem was, but
I think, I thought don't we already have this upcoming, the Metro District review? Because I think, Brett Wing and Tim Hardy already brought this up in the board. Said
It's
yes,
on our
we wanna do
list,
this.
so we prioritize the development study sessions. We're following up on that on the 21st, week from tonight. We have a study session planned to just talk about development broadly as a follow-up to the study session we had in December. We have metro districts and one other item that I'm drawing a blank on as kind of short list for, one of the things I'd like to do is a follow-up to our strategic plan. We talked about doing that like maybe every 6 months. So we may be able to combine those into one night, but the soonest we could do that is February, depending on how the development study session goes next week.
And then my other question would be just how are STRs going? See the slowdown, the stoppage, is it still kind of trickling in?
Nope, we've seen no additional applications, so we are still currently at our 12 that we initially approved.
And is there a plan to, Mary, what am I trying to say? May. It's getting tired. And I would agree with her. Maybe we review that and just kind of see how it went, kind of do a quick review, like this worked well, this didn't, and just kind of make sure everything's kind of in check and see if there's any tweaks that we need to do to that. So, I don't know.
Do we have a plan for a 6-month review or a 1-year review? I thought we talked about it, but I don't think we set a date, did we?
We haven't set a date.
No, and the application process, Ton prepared a very easy how-to guide, and it was a step-by-step guide. We had 2 applicants that just didn't want to follow any process. And staff did a remarkable job at holding a lot of hands through that process and explaining things over and over to get people to the point where they had that complete application. And a strict application of our regulations would have kicked a lot of people back to the very beginning again. And staff made a lot of concessions in order this very first time to help people through the process.
So on a scale of like 1 to 3 of like good, worse, great, where do you think it kind of fell into? Was there a lot of learning curve? Did it go as planned?
I think personally, I think it went really well.
Okay.
Considering, I think once we internally sorted out some of the processing kinks along the way, I think we really got them through in less than 30 days by the time we sorted everything out. And in my opinion, in my experience, that's rather impressive. So
How long did it take Laramie County?
Months.
Sweet.
And I will say, I think the one challenge that we did see is the separation requirement. That eliminated separation requirement, the distance between them that the board approved as part of the policy. I think that kicked out 6, maybe or more.
Right? Seems like they're all at step.
5 or 6.
5 or 6 that couldn't be approved because they were too close to another one. And so that's probably the one thing, if you want to allow or encourage, that might be something we would, that you may want to look at. Outside of that, I don't know that there were any other problems being able to get through the process.
Yeah, and I would say of all the regulations that you approved, that was the one that created the most pushback, was the separation. And it's primarily, it was the townhomes at Heron Lakes.
Yeah. If you had to guess, I know it's probably invisible because we're just driving at a number. How many applications do you think never even made it through the front door because they just said, I don't want to do it?
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure that anybody was really discouraged by the process itself. We do still have, I think, 2 bad actors who continue to operate, and our neighborhood services officer is pursuing that. But otherwise, I don't believe that people who chose not to come forward had nothing to do with the regulations or the process.
Because we had, estimated guess about 30 some were operation when we did the whole shutdown, and we have how many now? 12?
12.
So about half of them.
And keeping in mind that there were a handful of those in Heron Lakes, which Heron Lakes does not allow, other than in the town.
So Heron Lakes, we got stopped by their metro district before they even came to us, so it had nothing to do with us, other than Heron Lakes became aware of it because of us.
You know, on that note, the Desante Bay was where a number of them were down there. I think there's a number of homes now for sale right there where it is. So people that had them are getting out of them. There's,
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Just wanted to kind of see
I
that.
think they said as much too.
Because it's been kind of quiet. It's been kind of like, whoa.
Good thing. Good job. Cool. Yeah,
That's it.
awesome. Mr. Kurtz?
Yeah, I'll just say happy 2025.
Yeah.
Report, so.
Trustee Williams?
Yes, I'm gonna unpass if I could
Yep.
for a second. So, Mayor Karsbeck sent an email to us a while back from a Gabe Martinez, and it's about grants. And I was just wondering, if you ever give us a recap of what grants we actually were able to take advantage of. I'm not looking for an answer right now, but I just wonder if we could at some meeting just say, yeah, maybe we could even go back a little, a year or two and just say, we were able to capture all these grants and they were worth X number of dollars. I think that might be valuable to the group.
I can actually tell you right now, because the list is relatively short.
Okay.
So there are some that we have in process. We are working on some transportation-related grants for trails and bikeways. And those have not either been submitted or approved or disapproved. We did apply for a grant through the Reconnecting Communities program. It's a big federal grant process designed to mitigate impacts of big transportation infrastructure like highways or railroads on, cut communities in half. We applied for a planning grant to do all the design work for an underpass at 287. We did not get that grant, so we
can apply again for the railroad when it comes through.
That's right. Hopefully. I felt like we had a really competitive application based on the criteria. So they offered, the CDOT as the administering agency, they offered to give us a breakdown of why we didn't get funded. And so we requested a meeting. We'll be setting up today. We actually requested a meeting to do that. So we'll hear from them why we weren't competitive or what we were missing out on. Hopefully spruce that application up the next time that funding round comes out. And then we did apply for a GOCO grant that we've talked about previously, but I'll just remind everybody about open space acquisition along the river corridor. We were invited to apply. So you submit a concept paper, then they invite you to apply. That's a really good sign. They've narrowed down the pool significantly at that point, so your chances are really good. And we expect to hear back about that, I think in 2 months.
Great. And we have our study session next week, right?
We do.
Confirming that. And then, we had quite a bit of a lengthy discussion on Legacy Park, but I think that's an incredibly important thing going on with us. So I think the time we spent with it and all the questions that were asked, I think that was time very well spent. I didn't think, it may have seemed like it dragged on, but man, this is a big deal. I mean, almost 2,000 homes, holy cow. That's super important. So
Absolutely,
I think the time spent on it was very well spent.
Right, and having you guys' experience in planning. So. Really agree with that. And thank you for the grant thing, because thank the town. I saw the town apply to the MPO, so I forgot which category we were under. But it was great. So.
And actually, going back a few years, we did apply through the MPO for a multimodal options fund grant. That's what helped pay for the South Berthoud Parkway project.
Yeah, by the car wash.
And we do have another one that was through CDOT. I don't remember the exact funding source, and it got approved 4.5 years ago. But for the North Berthoud Parkway Trail,
That was an economic development grant that we had.
That's right, it was. It was an economic, and I actually, now that you mention it, I remember writing that, and it was, anyway. I made a good case, it worked.
It worked.
Yeah, and we did have some smaller grants for a water efficiency plan and the housing assessment as well. Through DOLA. EPA Brownfield grant that Ann's applied for. So anyway, I lied, the list is a little longer than.
Yeah, and it's a great thing. We should just maybe quarterly, or I'll just ask the question, or one of us, but it's good to hear what we're doing, because I didn't know about any of these. Are great.
I should have reached out to you, but last week, Greeley had an economic conference. There's thousands of people there. It was awesome. Ties in with a lot of stuff we're talking about. So affordable housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we sat at the same table at that. So it was.
Oh, you were there. Good.
Yeah, I thought it was
awesome.
great. Yeah, it was a great event.
What was the name of it?
It was. What's the name of that?
It was the BizWest Economic.
Yeah,
Forecast.
BizWest. Yeah.
Economic Forecast Conference.
Nice job. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have no reports, so yeah, look forward to a great 2025 year. I'll turn it over to Jack.
I just have one thing. I asked Walt to join us tonight to briefly talk about the DDA and just give you an update on the status of that effort. And so I'll just turn it over to Walt, or I can cover it and then Walt can fill in as needed. But we've been working with a working group of local businesses and property owners in downtown. They've been hugely supportive. They've provided incredible feedback and really dedicated a lot of just volunteer time to that effort. We have a draft plan of development that we've worked on with them that will come to you at some point in the future. But we did, after a lot of consideration, they have recommended that we not pursue the formation of a DDA at this time. I think the primary concern is just, is there enough business and property owner support to actually run an organization? And I think while there's a lot of support for the idea of one, there's not as much support or excitement about actually operating one. And it requires commitment. There's a board, there's there's work that has to be accomplished. And I think that's a very thoughtful and appropriate decision if there's not that core group. And we've said from the very beginning, and Walt has stressed to them, I've stressed to them, this is not the town is helping to facilitate this effort, and we think it could be a good thing. But this won't be a town entity. And so you have to be fully committed. And if you're not, let's not go down that road. And I think that generally the decision's been made by that group, and Walt can kind of fill in the gaps there, but that they feel like right now there's not enough of that core support group.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, the effort, the time, the effort, the discussion that was put into leading up to this decision has been excellent. From the community engagement, for all the meetings that we had, the survey that we did as a town, the follow-up meetings that Ayers Associates had with a lot of the businesses, all was excellent. And that's why Chris and I decided to proceed with the completion of the writing of the plan of development, which is basically a plan for our downtown going forward. So we're gonna finish that up this month. It should be done next week. And we're gonna use it as we go forward to work with the groups in downtown. We're not pulling out, as we made it very clear to them. We want to still collaborate on various projects that we both deem to be important for our downtown. In addition to that, as you all know, we're proceeding with our own projects. Chris is going to be talking to you about one in executive session. We're looking at the public works site. We're looking at the old town hall site. So there's things that we're going to be doing not on our own, but in partnership with them, but we will be taking the lead on. So we know that all this energy is going to be focused in our downtown and on our downtown over the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years. So we want to keep this going. So when Chris and I received the email Monday morning, I think they felt like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think? What are they going to think? It was kind of a relief for me and maybe for Chris to have that kind of honesty now before things progressed and we go to the ballot and all of that kind of thing. Because now is the time that decision needed to be made. Because we were going to be coming before you, well, January is going by pretty fast, probably early February, to ask you to vote to put this on a spring ballot. I mean, that's kind of where we are or were. So it was really good to have this honest discussion with the working group now. And that's not to say that there's no interest on their part to pull out, or to stop what they're doing. It's just we will continue to do what we do, but looking at various different initiatives to get the work done. So one of the things we talked about doing in the very near future, by the next maybe month, 2 or 3, is to bring in DCI, Downtown Colorado Inc., who works all over the state with downtowns. They work with communities that have DDAs, with URAs, with main streets, and those communities that don't have any of those. And they have all that information, and we are very familiar with them, and they're very familiar with us. We've had a lot of dialogue with them over the past 1.5 years now. So we'd like to bring them in to have a workshop meeting with the businesses in the downtown along with us, to have these kind of discussions. Where do we want to go? We know I think there's consensus around, we want to enhance our downtown. I think we said, just like small, quaint downtown, what do you mean by that? So when we say we want to enhance our downtown over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, what do we mean by that? We want to have some consensus on that as we go forward. So this is not going to curtail anything that we and they have planned going forward for our downtown. We'll just go in a different direction. In 2 years, it might come back. There might be enough interest and support from the business community to say, hey, we had a lot of discussion about it 2 years back. We're ready to do it now. and they can make a decision to go forward.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you all. And then the only other thing, just to piggyback on the study session next week, just wanted to thank you for responding to the survey and for all the feedback that we got. We'll go over those results as part of the study session, along with a virtual tour of developments, conversation, and some mapping exercise kind of stuff related to comp plan and zoning. And I think next week's going to be a great study session. We're going to do that upstairs in the boardroom upstairs rather than down here. It'll be a lot more comfortable, and I think just a better place for kind of engagement and dialogue than sometimes we have at the dais. So it'll be fun to be upstairs.
Pizza?
We will have food and we will have snacks as well. So
Yes.
Ann's gonna have some good snacks for you during the meeting.
We'll
also have,
ingredients.
we'll also have some food. So absolutely.
Hey, sounds great. Awesome. Okay. Now for good reports, so anyone like to move us into executive session?
I will move to enter into an executive session pursuant to CRS Section 246402-4E1 to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing the strategy of negotiations, and instructing negotiators. The following details are provided. Property negotiation for 270 Mountain Avenue.
Thank you. Wait a second. We're at trustees, trustee Hardy, the seconded clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wing?
Yes.
Trustee Hardy?
Yes.
Trustee Ayers?
Yes.
Trustee Kurtz?
Yes.
Mayor Karsbeck?
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. So we'll meet in that back room and then we will adjourn from there. We won't be taking action tonight. So,